y luego a 4:30 ya te lo conectas. ¿Te parece?
Perfecto, desconecto entonces, ¿no?
Sí, muchísimas gracias.
A ti.
Gracias.
Gracias.
Vale, yo ya me quito la cámara y voy a empezar a retransmitir ya.
Buenas tardes, buenos días. Las elecciones presidenciales del 2020 se celebran el martes 3 de noviembre en Estados Unidos y serán las 59 elecciones presidenciales en Estados Unidos. Los votantes eligen a los compromisarios que a su vez deberán escoger al nuevo presidente y vicepresidente a través del colegio electoral. Un acontecimiento con alcance global que en el CEU no queremos dejar de analizar en 2 jornadas. Hoy contaremos con Juan Verde, que nos dará las claves para entender las elecciones americanas, y contaremos con un debate de 2 representantes de los partidos demócratas y republicanos. Mañana, en 2 jornadas simultáneas, contaremos con profesionales para analizar de forma específica las implicaciones económicas, sociales, de comunicación y de desinformación también. Agradecer al señor Michael Bryan, presidente del American Club de Madrid, y a María Jesús Lago, directora de Alumni CEU San Pablo, por la organización de estas jornadas. Y sobre todo al señor Scott Higgins, Political Counselor of United States Embassy, por su presencia en la inauguración de estas jornadas. El señor Michael Bryan tiene la palabra.
Muchas gracias. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michael Bryan, the president of the American Club of Madrid, and just want to say that we're extremely happy to be a part of this week. I'd just like to give some thanks to a few people, if I may. Firstly, the University of San Pablo, CEU, la rectora Rosa Viciedo, vicerectora de Internacionalización, Aonoa Uribe, vicerector de Estudiantes, Ángel Bartolomé, for all the activities and support for the American Week. Also, a special thanks to Mr. Scott Higgins, political counselor of the United States Embassy, for taking the time to be here today with us. And just to point out that, of course, he, as the United States ambassador, is the honorary president of our club. And then lastly, just to finally point out that the American Club has a long-standing relationship with the University of San Pablo, CEU, in organizing different types of events, for example, the Need to Know seminars and business lunches. And we look forward to a long and continuing development of the ties between our 2 organizations. So thank you very much. Mr. Higgins, over to you, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you. No, thank you very much. And absolutely thank you to everybody, all the organizers of this event. I think it's incredibly important, incredibly a great opportunity for all of the participants as well as us to get together and discuss what an incredible event that's coming up for the United States. You know, it's been a long time, many months coming. You've seen all the debates, you've seen all the back and forth, but you know, I think this is a fantastic opportunity to drill down a little bit closer and understand really truly what's going on, and this is going to be a fantastic week. So again, thank you for those kind words of introduction. It's great to be with everybody here to kick off CEU's American Week. During these trying times, events like these bring us closer together and provide us the opportunity to learn more about the United States and our really centuries-old experience with elections. So also thank you to the CEU San Pablo University for organizing such an important event. As the introduction said, on Tuesday, November 3rd, Americans will go to the polls to elect our next president of the United States, maybe the same president, maybe a new one. This is the 59th time we'll elect a president in our history. Actually, Americans have been going to the polls for the past several weeks, casting their ballots. And this is in due great part to the COVID pandemic. So what we've seen is a record number of early voters coming out to turn out across the country to take part in this important civic responsibility. So since America's first election in 1789, this uninterrupted tradition of democratic elections, followed by peaceful political transitions, has been one of the United States' defining traits. Our great experiment of a government of the people, by the people, and for the people has endured at home and inspired people around the world. 2 centuries ago, the United States was the only democratic republic in the world. Today, nearly 200 nations have embraced popular elections as a means of selecting their leaders. As a political counselor at the embassy in Madrid, I've witnessed how our shared values, like free and fair elections, provide the foundation and trust necessary to expand cooperation between our governments, but as well as between Spaniards and Americans alike. It has been an honor for me to collaborate with my Spanish counterparts and the people of Spain to ensure things of a collective security and defense, to promote our shared economic prosperity, and to confront our most pressing global and regional challenges. We've had the pleasure of working with Spain on a number of fronts. So we're hard at work promoting a democratic transition in Venezuela. We're countering Russian, Chinese, and Iranian malign influence. We're also raising awareness about the safeguards, about the need to safeguard emerging fifth generation wireless networks. And we're also engaging students and universities to increase the number of students and Spaniards studying in our respective countries. The embassy relies on the support of Spanish organizations and universities to increase understanding between our countries. My colleagues and I were pleased to learn that CEU San Pablo University was organizing American Week that included discussions on US elections and American values. And let me assure you, there are many incredible, diverse, and beautiful cultures within the United States beyond what you see in American films and television and music. So these elections is another just fantastic example of that culture. So I'm glad we're here this week to be able to discuss this more in depth. So whether 2020 will be your first or your 10th time following US elections, I know the events in the coming days will provide a great deal of useful knowledge for political newcomers and seasoned experts alike. I hope the sessions that you have during this American Week enhance your understanding of the role of the Electoral College and provide insightful backgrounds on the US Constitution, the American political system, and US political parties. I will close with a quote from James Madison. So Madison was the 4th US president, the 5th US Secretary of State, and the chief drafter of the US Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And Madison once wrote, "The advancement and diffusion of knowledge is the only guardian of true liberty." So I hope this week's diffusion of knowledge will expand your understanding of US elections, offer you an opportunity to have a lively and informed debate, and to motivate you to learn more about the United States. So thank you again to CEU and San Pablo University for this opportunity. And I wish you all the best in your events and sessions this week.
Tiene la palabra la rectora Rosa Visiedo, doña Rosa Visiedo.
Muchas gracias Ángel, muchas gracias vicerrector. Buenas tardes o buenos días, según el país de origen, y muchas gracias a todos los que os habéis conectado, los que estáis conectados para sumaros a esta jornada que promete ser interesante sobre las elecciones americanas, unas jornadas organizadas por el Vicerrectorado de Estudiantes y Vida Universitaria. Por ello os doy las gracias también al vicerrector Ángel Bartolomé y también, por supuesto, a María Jesús Lago, responsable de alumni de nuestra universidad. Como rectora de esta universidad, para mí ha sido un placer y es un placer contar en este primer acto, en este acto de inauguración del American Week, con Michael Bryan, presidente del American Club de Madrid, y con Scott Higgins, asesor político de la Embajada de Estados Unidos. Muchas gracias, Michael, muchas gracias, Scott, por acompañaros en esta sesión de inauguración. También es un placer contar con una persona de la talla y de la experiencia internacional de Juan Verde, que va a ser nuestro primer ponente en esta primera jornada de hoy. Su país, Michael, Scott, Estados Unidos, es un país por el que sentimos una gran admiración. Siempre está presente en el desarrollo de nuestros proyectos estratégicos y en los proyectos de internacionalización de nuestra universidad. Mantenemos una estrecha relación con Estados Unidos a través de distintos programas de intercambio y de movilidad, entre los que destacan nuestros International Bilingual Programs, mediante los cuales nuestros estudiantes, los estudiantes del CEU, de nuestra universidad, pueden mejorar su formación académica en algunas de las universidades norteamericanas más prestigiosas. Pero, de alguna forma, más allá de los lazos académicos que nos unen a Estados Unidos, no podemos olvidar lo mucho que todos, como ciudadanos, debemos también a los Estados Unidos. La Revolución Americana supuso un hito en la historia que hace que los Estados Unidos sean considerados en este momento como la primera democracia contemporánea del mundo. Por esto, El evento que hoy hemos organizado, que hoy inauguramos, no es una jornada más sobre la actualidad política o internacional, cosa que está muy bien, sino que simboliza la fiesta, una fiesta de la soberanía popular, del gobierno del pueblo. Es el encuentro con mayúsculas de los ciudadanos para elegir a sus representantes políticos, bajo el prisma del ejercicio de la libertad de expresión y de la libertad de voto. Parafraseando al presidente Lincoln, ningún hombre es demasiado bueno para gobernar a otro sin su consentimiento. Por esta razón, las elecciones y las campañas electorales en las que los candidatos presentan sus propuestas son el eje de nuestras democracias liberales. Estamos ahora ya en la cuenta atrás de las próximas elecciones norteamericanas. Todos deseamos conocer los resultados y la jornada de hoy nos ayudará seguramente, con toda seguridad, a clarificar nuestra comprensión de las propuestas de los dos grandes partidos, pero lo más importante, creo yo, como universitarios, es no perder de vista que el objetivo de las elecciones, de todas las elecciones, de cualquier elección, es dar voz y voto a los ciudadanos, para que sean ellos la expresión máxima de la soberanía popular. Estoy segura que estas jornadas van a ser de interés para todos. Por tanto, muchas gracias a Michael de nuevo, muchas gracias Scott, muchas gracias Juan y muchas gracias a todos los que vais a participar durante esta tarde y el día de mañana. Muchísimas gracias a todos.
Muchas gracias, rectora, muchas gracias, Rosa. Para mí un placer ahora introducirles a Juan Verde, máster en Administración Pública de la Universidad de Harvard, licenciado cum laude en Ciencia Política y Relaciones Internacionales por la Universidad de Boston. Juan es un reconocido estratega internacional, especializado en economía sostenible. En el ámbito político ha colaborado en 15 campañas políticas con algunas de las personalidades más relevantes a nivel mundial, como los expresidentes Barack Obama, Bill Clinton y la secretaria de Estado Hillary Clinton y el ex vicepresidente Al Gore y recientemente Joe Biden. Durante la administración del presidente Obama ocupó el puesto de subsecretario adjunto para Europa y Europa para el Departamento de Comercio y de Gobierno de Estados Unidos y actualmente preside la Fundación Advanced Leadership, una institución americana sin ánimo de lucro cuya misión es capacitar a la próxima generación de líderes como agentes del cambio de la sociedad. Muchas gracias, Juan. Cuando quieras.
Aquí.
Hola, muy buenas. Encantado de estar con todos vosotros. Muchísimas gracias por la invitación a participar en este foro tan interesante y gracias a todos los organizadores. Yo lo que quisiera, si os parece bien, es estructurar mis comentarios en tres ideas principales con una serie de claves para entender las elecciones, pero en primer lugar quiero hablar sobre lo que hay en juego en estas elecciones del próximo martes. Y no solamente para Estados Unidos, sino también para el mundo entero, la comunidad internacional y particularmente para Europa y para España. Y en segundo lugar, los comentarios que quiero hacer van más dirigidos a lo que es el estado actual de las elecciones. ¿Dónde estamos a 6 días de las elecciones? ¿Qué podemos esperar en los próximos días? Y esas claves que van muy dirigidas a entender la idiosincrasia electoral en Estados Unidos. Obviamente es un sistema muy distinto al que conocemos porque se basa en el colegio electoral y no necesariamente en el voto popular. Y en tercer lugar, daros 2 pinceladas de lo que va a ocurrir después del 3 de noviembre. Todo el mundo está hablando de las elecciones del 3, pero creo que eso puede ser el comienzo de una era muy distinta en diferentes aspectos. Así que empiezo con la primera de estas 3 ideas y es, obviamente, ¿qué hay en juego? Hay muchísimo juego para Estados Unidos, pero yo me atrevería a decir que sobre todo para mí lo que más me preocupa es la composición de la Corte Suprema. ¿Y qué quiero decir con eso? Como probablemente sepáis, en Europa tenemos un sistema judicial que se basa en el derecho civil y el derecho civil le permite a los jueces interpretar la ley, pero con muy poco margen, ¿no? Sin embargo, el derecho anglosajón es muy distinto en cuanto a que es derecho que se basa en precedente y eso hace que el órgano de la Corte Suprema tenga un poder descomunal porque puede interpretar de forma tajantemente inconstitucional cualquier ley que haya pasado anteriormente, ¿no? Actualmente la Corte Suprema, con la confirmación ayer de Amy Berry Coney, está compuesta por 6 jueces conservadores, incluso algunos dirían que muy conservadores, y 3 más de corte progresista, digamos, ¿no? Lo cual hace que la situación sea un poquito preocupante, porque en los próximos 4 años el presidente de Estados Unidos va a poder votar probablemente a elegir, mejor dicho, a 1 o incluso 2 componentes más. Y eso haría que lo que es la ideología y filosofía política del país está en juego durante los próximos 40 o 50 años. ¿Por qué? Porque la inmensa mayoría de los jueces son jueces muy jóvenes y son puestos independientes de por vida, y están absolutamente desvinculados de la Casa Blanca o del Congreso, ¿no? En eso quería decir que hay mucho en juego. De hecho, en los próximos 2 años, por ejemplo, hay una serie de casos ante la Corte Suprema que podrían significar la eliminación, por ejemplo, de la opción de aborto en Estados Unidos. Pondría en peligro también una serie de leyes muy importantes alrededor del tema de la igualdad de género, o incluso el Obamacare, que, como muchos sabéis, en Estados Unidos no existe la salud, un sistema sanitario universal, sino que Obama lo que hizo fue que para aproximadamente 35 millones de norteamericanos que no pueden pagarlo, el gobierno les paga y les ofrece un sistema alternativo privado. Pero incluso eso está en juicio ahora mismo, y podríamos ver una Corte Suprema que lo desmantele por completo. Y aparte de eso, pues están otros temas como el matrimonio gay y muchos otros temas importantes. Yo diría que en cuanto a la Corte Suprema, aunque nadie habla de este tema, es muy importante desde un punto de vista ideológico. En segundo lugar, diría que lo que hay en juego en Estados Unidos en este momento es una continuación de una política que creo que de forma objetiva podemos decir que ha fomentado la división, la tensión y la polarización en Estados Unidos. Jamás antes habíamos vivido en un periodo como este con tan grado de polarización en el país. Y esto creo que es objetivo, lo estamos viendo en las manifestaciones, en los disturbios, y esa falta de estabilidad social y esa crisis racial que se está viendo en Estados Unidos, ¿no? Entonces creo que eso es un tema importantísimo, porque si gana Biden sería un cambio, un contraste muy importante. Yo no digo que Biden vaya a lograr acabar con la polarización. Lo que sí digo es que si sale reelegido Trump, sabemos exactamente qué va a ocurrir, porque lo tiene muy claro, y sería una continuación de lo que ha ocurrido en los últimos 4 años. Si gana Biden, habría un intento, creo que muy legítimo, de incentivar más la unidad y el consenso en el país. ¿Y en qué me baso para decir eso? Puesto que al fin y al cabo yo creo que para entender qué va a ser alguien en el futuro, lo mejor es analizar qué ha hecho en el pasado, ¿no? Y él estuvo 42 años en el Senado, se caracterizó siempre por ser un senador que intentaba crear consenso con sus colegas republicanos, y de hecho los grandes proyectos que logró sacar adelante fueron proyectos siempre con colegas republicanos que tuvieron muchísimo alcance en la sociedad norteamericana. Creo que podríamos esperar más de eso, pero va a ser una batalla, sobre todo en los próximos 4 años, de lucha directa contra la desigualdad que existe en Estados Unidos. ¿Qué quiero decir con eso? Porque es que vale la pena hacer un pequeño paréntesis, ¿no? La situación actual en Estados Unidos de desequilibrio económico y sobre todo de inestabilidad social tiene mucho que ver con la desigualdad. El 1% de la población norteamericana es dueño del 42% de la riqueza. El 10% de la población es dueño de casi el 84% de la riqueza norteamericana. Por primera vez en la historia, una persona trabajando a tiempo completo 40 horas no es capaz de llegar a fin de mes y cobrando el salario mínimo, y tiene que buscarse normalmente otro trabajo los fines de semana. Eso no es sostenible en el tiempo y nos pone en una situación, creo que bastante, diría yo, que preocupante, ¿no? Por alguna manera ponerlo de una manera clara y directa, ¿no? Y en segundo lugar diría que esto va a representar una nueva era en Estados Unidos, donde van a haber una serie de reformas importantísimas. Primero, la reforma judicial. Estados Unidos es hoy por hoy el país que más ciudadanos encarcela todos los años, y tiene el mayor porcentaje de sus ciudadanos encarcelados, ¿no? Esto tiene que acabar. Tenemos un sistema policial totalmente militarizado, donde hemos visto en los últimos meses asesinatos o ejecuciones, como se quieran llamar, de personas en la vía pública, ¿no? Esto es un indicador más de que existe un problema que requiere de una reforma judicial. En segundo lugar, veremos una reforma fiscal. El ejemplo que puedo dar es lo que ha dicho en numerosas ocasiones alguien como Warren Buffett, ¿no? Que es uno de los hombres más ricos del mundo y tiene una fortuna de billones de dólares, y dice que proporcionalmente él paga entre un 15 y un 20% de impuestos, y es de los que más paga, y resulta que su secretaria, que gana $35.000 al año, paga aproximadamente un 30%. Eso no tiene cabida, ¿no? Y sin embargo, en los últimos 4 años hemos visto un descenso de los impuestos para el 1% de la población. Todo eso crea una necesidad de una reforma fiscal muy importante. La reforma educativa. En Estados Unidos no existe un sistema educativo donde las personas puedan ir a la universidad de manera bastante asequible, ¿no? Es cada vez más cara, y es normal que alguien se gradúe de la universidad con una deuda de $200.000, por ejemplo, ¿no? Vamos a ver una reforma educativa. Pero más allá de Estados Unidos y lo que estamos hablando, lo que está en juego la sanidad, está en juego la educación, está en juego, obviamente, la reforma judicial, la reforma fiscal. Yo creo que para el mundo también hay muchísimo en juego en las próximas elecciones. Si gana Trump, vamos a ver una continuación de esa política de America First, donde es lo que es. O sea, yo no hago una valoración ideológica, pero claramente lo que hemos visto en los últimos 4 años es una postura de mayor aislamiento de Estados Unidos. Se ha fomentado el nacionalismo y sobre todo el populismo, ¿no? El populismo no entiende de colores o ideología de izquierda o derecha, es populismo. Versus lo que quiere Biden, que es volver a una política diplomática de Estados Unidos que se base en el liderazgo global, donde volvamos a apostar por una noción de multilateralismo para enfrentarnos a los grandes retos de la humanidad. ¿Cuáles son esos retos a los que nos enfrentamos a nivel global? Pues yo creo que son relativamente claros, ¿no? Desde luego, las pandemias, la actual y las que puedan venir en el futuro, el cambio climático, que es la gran amenaza existencial de la humanidad en estos momentos, el terrorismo internacional y la proliferación nuclear, por mencionar algunos, ¿no? Todos tienen un denominador común, y es que requieren de una mayor colaboración por parte de los miembros de la comunidad internacional, requiere de una mayor integración por parte de los mecanismos multilaterales y fomentar, obviamente, una mayor cooperación entre los países. Y eso es lo que propone Biden, ¿no? Pero es que nos hemos salido en los últimos 4 años de prácticamente todos los grandes acuerdos, ¿no? Nos hemos salido del Acuerdo de París y hemos pasado de ser parte de la solución a ser parte del problema. Con Obama y Biden se lideró esa iniciativa que resulta en el Acuerdo de París, y luego cuando llega Trump nos vamos siendo él el único o uno de los pocos negacionistas del G20, ¿no? Nos hemos salido de la Organización Mundial de la Salud en mitad de una pandemia mundial. Nos hemos salido del acuerdo que teníamos de no proliferación nuclear con Irán. El mundo hoy no es un mundo más seguro que hace 4 años, ¿no? Y eso, pero es que va más allá. Nos hemos salido de la UNESCO, nos hemos salido del Tratado de Open Skies. O sea, esto va, creo que, de mal en peor. Entonces, creo que podríamos esperar una política muy similar a eso, ¿no? Y eso tiene un impacto también incluso a nivel europeo, ¿no? Yo creo que nos afecta a todos los europeos lo que está pasando, ¿no? ¿Y por qué digo eso? Pues, por ejemplo, la OTAN, ¿no? Para mí la OTAN es uno de los mecanismos de cooperación transatlántica más importantes en política exterior. ¿Por qué? Porque ha funcionado, y ha funcionado muy bien durante 75 años. Después de la Segunda Guerra Mundial hasta ahora hemos vivido en Europa el periodo más largo de paz, prosperidad y estabilidad. Jamás antes habíamos estado 75 años sin matarnos los unos a los otros en Europa, ¿no? Pero es que el mundo hoy es mucho más seguro basándose en ese acuerdo que había entre Estados Unidos y Europa de defensa incondicional de la OTAN. Y todo esto ante un panorama donde vemos a una Rusia mucho más beligerante, mucho más ambiciosa y agresiva, ¿no? Y esto, desde luego, nos va a afectar muchísimo. Más allá de eso, creo que incluso lo que está pasando entre Estados Unidos y Europa nos debe afectar, porque hemos visto un enfriamiento de la relación que se ha manifestado también en habernos salido de la negociación del acuerdo de libre comercio que estaba a punto de firmarse, ¿no? Solo faltaba la firma, de hecho, y el presidente Trump no solamente se ha retractado, sino que ha empezado una guerra comercial con Estados Unidos, ha impuesto incluso todo tipo de aranceles. Y eso nos afecta a nosotros en España también, ¿no? España es hoy por hoy el país de toda la Unión Europea más afectada por las medidas unilaterales hasta ahora, que probablemente va a haber reciprocidad por parte de la Unión Europea, que están esperando a ver qué pasa el martes, ¿no? Pero ¿por qué digo eso? Porque es que esta guerra comercial está afectando a prácticamente la inmensa mayoría de los productos estrella agrícolas que se venden y se exportan a Estados Unidos, ¿no? El vino, el aceite, las aceitunas, los quesos, los productos porcinos, pero incluso va más allá. También estamos viendo ahora de que esa guerra que existe entre Airbus y Boeing tiene una repercusión directa en España, donde en España hay toda una industria de componentes del Airbus. Y eso nos debería preocupar, ¿no? Y eso me lleva también un poco a hablar de lo que hay en juego de cara a China. Nos vamos hacia un mundo más polarizado. Nos guste o no nos guste, me temo que es la triste realidad. Yo ya no veo un país, o en Estados Unidos no veo que el país vaya a bajar la guardia para defenderse de China. Creo que la situación de China es muy peligrosa porque hasta ahora no ha habido una comunidad internacional fuerte que le pueda parar los pies ante la actitud arbitraria y poco justa que ha tenido a la hora de abrir sus fronteras, ¿no? Y esto va a cambiar independientemente de quién gane. La gran diferencia va a ser que si gana Biden, tendremos una actitud mucho más dialogante, que no significa en absoluto ceder, simplemente decir, oye, sí hay cosas en las que podemos colaborar, ¿no? Como esos grandes retos a los que se enfrenta la humanidad que mencioné anteriormente. Si gana Trump, veremos una continuación de esa política de agresión, esa política de confrontación, y yo no sé hasta qué punto eso tiene sentido, desde luego, no para la inmensa mayoría de los consumidores ni tampoco de los ciudadanos. Bien, habiendo dicho eso, y espero haberos hecho pensar sobre lo mucho que hay en juego en estas elecciones, porque no solamente se juegan mucho los americanos, nos jugamos mucho todos los ciudadanos del mundo. Yo como ciudadano americano, que también tengo ciudadanía española, lo veo quizás con un prisma distinto, pero me preocupa muchísimo lo que pueda ocurrir. Habiendo dicho eso, ¿dónde estamos hoy? Os quiero dar un poco un estado de la campaña, ¿no? Os diría que aquí desde Washington lo estamos respirando con optimismo y cautela. Ojo, porque ya estuvimos aquí hace 4 años, donde la inmensa mayoría de las encuestas nos daban la victoria contundente y clara, incluso inevitable, ¿no? Y sin embargo perdimos. Pero ¿dónde estamos? A día de hoy estamos a 11 puntos en las encuestas. Ningún candidato en la historia de Estados Unidos ha perdido teniendo este tipo de ventaja con tan poco tiempo. Faltan tan solo 6 días. Sería difícil que pudiera remontar, ¿no? Pero al fin y al cabo, entendiendo la idiosincrasia, ¿no?, del proceso electoral en Estados Unidos, tenemos un sistema de colegio electoral, no de voto popular. De hecho, en las últimas 5 elecciones presidenciales de Estados Unidos, los demócratas hemos ganado el voto popular, pero no siempre hemos podido gobernar. No pudimos gobernar en el 2000 con Gore, y tampoco pudimos gobernar con Hillary, a pesar de que Hillary ganó el voto popular con más de 3,5 millones de votos, ojo. Entonces, ¿dónde estamos hoy? 8 estados claves muy, muy importantes, donde al fin y al cabo esos 8 estados son los que verdaderamente decantan la balanza para un partido o para otro. ¿Por qué? Porque en California, donde vamos a ganar con 30, 40 puntos, no hay elecciones. ¿Por qué? Porque el que gane 50% más 1 del voto popular en ese estado se lleva el 100% de los votos del colegio electoral. Y en Montana, donde vamos a perder, tampoco hay elecciones porque ellos van a ganar seguro, entonces se van a llevar todos los votos del colegio electoral de Montana. Entonces toda la batalla al final se resume en esos 8 o 10 estados donde las elecciones son muy reñidas, ¿no? Y esos 8 estados van a marcar la diferencia. ¿Por qué somos muy optimistas? Porque estamos ahora mismo de favoritos en 6 de esos 8 estados, con muy pocos puntos dentro del margen de error, pero se decanta más la balanza hacia nosotros que hacia ellos. Por ejemplo, en estados como Filadelfia, donde tenemos 3 puntos de ventaja, con un margen de error de un 3 a un 5, pero tenemos 3 puntos de ventaja, y en otros tenemos hasta 4 y 5 puntos de ventaja. Lo otro es que en los últimos 10 días se ha ampliado el mapa electoral de esos 8 estados y han entrado 2 más en juego, donde seguimos teniendo un margen y una posibilidad muy real de ganar. Uno de ellos es Texas, la meca de los republicanos, de donde vienen los Bush. No ganamos Texas desde 1971, hace casi 50 años, y sin embargo estamos ahora mismo dentro del margen de error en Texas, ¿no? Iowa, que lo ganó Trump hace 4 años y ganó con 9 puntos. Tiene una victoria ahora mismo de una ventaja de 1 punto. Entonces, todo eso nos hace pensar que la tendencia es muy positiva para nosotros. Esos estados son Florida, Wisconsin, Arizona, Michigan, Carolina del Norte, Pensilvania, Georgia y Minnesota. Florida es la clave de todos estos 8 estados. ¿Por qué? Porque Trump tiene que ganar Florida. Matemáticamente no le salen las cuentas si no gana Florida. Nosotros podemos perder Florida y tener muchas otras combinaciones, pero si ganamos Florida, se acabó. Ganamos las elecciones. En Florida hay un empate técnico absoluto. Está Trump con un punto de ventaja en algunas encuestas, en otras estamos nosotros con 1 o 2 puntos de ventaja, pero hay un empate técnico. Ahí el voto hispano va a jugar un papel importantísimo y particularmente el voto puertorriqueño. Pero para entender lo que va a ocurrir la semana que viene, os diría que la clave está en la participación, en los índices de participación electoral. Si la gente sale a votar, ganamos. Si no sale a votar y se queda en casa por el COVID, lo tenemos muy difícil. Y diría que, sin embargo, ante esta incertidumbre que la gente salga a votar o no, sí hay una serie de indicadores que nos hacen sentirnos muy, muy optimistas, ¿no? En primer lugar, os diría lo siguiente, y puede ser sorprendente, ¿no? Pero cuando la gente me pregunta, bueno, ¿pero no tienes miedo de que vuelva a ocurrir lo que ocurrió hace 4 años? Digo, por supuesto que tengo miedo, tengo pánico, de hecho, pero no me preocupo tanto porque la situación hoy es muy distinta a la que era hace 4 años. Para entender por qué ganó Trump, yo diría que tendríamos que analizar y pensar en quién, no en quién votó por Trump, sino quién no votó por Hillary. Esa es la clave para entender los resultados de hace 4 años. Trump es presidente hoy por las mujeres. Y os puede sorprender, pero el 59% del voto femenino fue a Trump. Hoy Trump tiene aproximadamente un 50% de las mujeres. Ha perdido 9 puntos en ese segmento que puede marcar la diferencia en esos estados, ¿no? Entonces eso hace que la situación sea distinta a la que era hace 4 años. Los negros, o sea, los afroamericanos, si el mismo número de afroamericanos que votó por Obama hubiese votado por Hillary, hubiésemos ganado las elecciones con suficientes votos en 5 de los estados y hubiese sido muy fácil ganar. Hoy por hoy se espera que el índice de participación de la comunidad afroamericana va a ser histórica a favor de Biden. Y por último, los hispanos, donde los hispanos, como mencionaba, en Florida, por ejemplo, ¿no? También vamos a determinar la balanza para bien o para mal. La inmensa mayoría, el 74, 73% va a votar por Biden, pero la clave ahí es entender si no salen a votar. Si no salen a votar, podríamos perder. Pero son también determinantes en Filadelfia, en Arizona, en Texas, en Iowa. O sea, son estados donde podemos marcar la diferencia. Y por último, el voto blanco, que siempre ha sido su base más sólida. En el año 2016, hace 4 años, ganó el voto del hombre blanco anglosajón con 9 puntos de ventaja y ahora tiene 5 puntos. O sea, que está perdiendo también en ese segmento y por eso cambia la situación. Y por último, diría algo interesante también para entender la diferencia de hace 4 años ahora, ¿no? Y es que poca gente sabe, porque esto no se suele ver en la prensa, que en Estados Unidos no hay una sola elección nacional. Hay 50 elecciones, una por cada estado, porque son independientes. Y en algunos de estos estados, en las últimas elecciones, hubo un tercer candidato. Y en todos los casos era un tercer candidato demócrata, o por lo menos, no demócrata, no del partido, pero sí ideológicamente progresista, ¿no? Y eso nos quitó votos, muy pocos, en algunos estados un 1%, un 2%, pero en unas elecciones tan reñidas como las últimas hubiese sido en algunos estados suficiente para decantar la balanza. Esta vez no tenemos ningún tercer candidato y eso también creo que nos beneficia un poco, ¿no? Y luego, por último, como dije anteriormente, los niveles de participación. Esa es la clave. Ya han votado 70 millones de personas. O sea, la mitad de toda la gente que votó en el 2016 ya ha votado. Y falta todavía casi una semana, ¿no? Faltan 6 días. Y este fin de semana saldrá mucha gente a votar. Obviamente lo que estamos proponiendo los demócratas es que la gente tiene que votar por adelantado, que tiene que irse al ayuntamiento, al colegio, al censo donde le toque votar y ejercer su voto, sobre todo en un momento como el actual. Estamos en mitad de una pandemia, no deberían esperar todos al último día, donde hay conglomeraciones y ponen su vida en peligro, ¿no? Entonces, lo que estamos viendo es unos índices de participación que van a ser históricos a juzgar por lo que está ocurriendo ahora y esto todo creo que va a ser muy positivo. Y si tuviese que añadir un factor más diferenciador de hace 4 años, diría que ya los votantes tienen un track record. Ellos antes, en el 2016, podían valorar si sus promesas eran promesas vacías o si verdaderamente iba a hacer lo que dijo que iba a hacer. Hoy ya tiene una serie de resultados, buenos o malos, pero tiene resultados y hay una trayectoria de 4 años, ¿no? Yo creo que eso le está pasando factura y la clave de por qué está perdiendo apoyos, donde los está perdiendo, como he mencionado anteriormente, tiene que ver con la falta de liderazgo desde la Casa Blanca y una pésima gestión de cara al COVID, a la respuesta ante el COVID-19. Han muerto ya en Estados Unidos 225.000 personas y se esperan otros 200.000 muertos antes de febrero. Es el peor país en cuanto a la gestión del COVID en el planeta, en cuanto a número de infectados y en cuanto a número de muertes. Y esto obviamente es un tema muy candente, es un tema de mucha importancia para los votantes. Las tasas de desempleo a niveles históricos, y luego se combina todo esto con una tormenta perfecta entre la crisis sanitaria causada por el COVID-19 con la crisis económica resultante del COVID y de la mala gestión de la crisis sanitaria, y todo esto ante un momento de gran inestabilidad social y racial causada directamente por el aumento en la desigualdad en los últimos 4 años. Entonces, un poco para concluir esta segunda parte de mis comentarios en cuanto a las claves, somos muy optimistas. ¿Es posible que gane Trump? Desde luego que es posible, pero creo que muy poco probable y cada vez menos. Creo que no hay suficiente tiempo para remontar en tan solo 6 días, ¿no? Y eso nos podría llevar a una situación de grandes cambios en Estados Unidos, porque dije anteriormente que a diferencia de la última vez, podemos ahora en ese tsunami azul, lo llaman tsunami azul, que sería lo que arrasaran los demócratas, y le llaman azul porque azul es el color del Partido Demócrata, el rojo es del Partido Republicano. Ese tsunami azul es probable y nos llevaría a no solamente controlar la Casa Blanca, sino también el Congreso y el Senado, lo cual nos daría la posibilidad muy real de gobernar durante los siguientes 2 años y llevar a cabo esos grandes cambios estructurales e institucionales que creemos que son absolutamente necesarios en estos momentos de grave crisis en Estados Unidos, ¿no? Entonces, yo creo que, lo digo con una sonrisa, porque ya estuve aquí hace 4 años, estábamos muy confiados y perdimos, pero creo que por todos los motivos que he explicado, que podemos respirar un poquito más tranquilos. Sin embargo, el mensaje dentro de la campaña, hace 2 semanas, del director de la campaña ha sido que tenemos que seguir trabajando hasta el último día como si estuviésemos por detrás de las encuestas, porque no podemos permitirnos el lujo de confiarnos. ¿Y eso dónde nos lleva? A lo que va a pasar después del 3 de noviembre. Hay 2 escenarios. El que veo imposible es una victoria de Trump clara, contundente y por mayoría. Eso no va a ocurrir. Matemáticamente es casi imposible. Lo que puede ocurrir son 2 escenarios. Un escenario A, donde el Partido Demócrata lleva a cabo ese tsunami azul que se espera y sorprenda, porque no tenemos que ganar por 10 puntos del voto popular. Aunque ganemos en la mayoría de los estados, aunque sea por 0.1 o 1 punto, nos llevamos el 100% de los votos del colegio electoral. Y eso podría significar una victoria sin precedente o por lo menos histórica en Estados Unidos, ¿no? Se encontraría Biden a un país dividido, polarizado, pero con un mandato claro de llevar a cabo estas reformas y estos cambios que queremos hacer en muy poco tiempo. Tendríamos 2 años hasta las siguientes elecciones de medio término, que ocurrirán dentro de 2 años, pero nos daría esa flexibilidad y capacidad de controlando el Senado, el Congreso y la Casa Blanca, llevar a cabo estos cambios. Yo en conversaciones con el presidente Obama, y él lo ha dicho incluso en público, ¿no? Yo creo que de lo único que se arrepienta en su mandato es que ya cuando tuvimos la mayoría en el 2008, cometió el error histórico de intentar no enfrentarse en todo a los republicanos, en buscar consenso con ellos, y eso le impidió llevar a cabo todas las reformas que quería llevar, y luego 2 años más tarde perdimos la mayoría en el Senado y ya no pudimos volver a actuar con facilidad durante 6 años, ¿no? Y esto creo que no va a volver a ocurrir, por lo pronto no en el futuro más cercano, ¿no? Y el segundo escenario, ya un poco para terminar, sería un escenario que puede sorprenderos a todos, ¿no? Pero es un resultado donde las encuestas que nos dan la victoria se equivoquen, donde los pronósticos se equivoquen y gane Trump por muy poco en algunos estados. El resultado muy ajustado, que significa que podríamos ver una situación que se vuelva a repetir como la del año 2000. La inmensa mayoría de los demócratas están votando por correo. ¿Y por qué eso podría cambiar la balanza? Porque ese día el señor Trump podría decir que ha ganado y cantar victoria basándose en los resultados del voto presencial sin tomar en consideración el voto por correo, que en algunos casos va a ser muy significativo. El voto por correo se terminaría de contar en algunos casos hasta 7 y 8 días más tarde. Eso iniciaría toda una escalada inmensa de batallas legales por estados, por condados, por municipios, donde se pongan tela de juicio las papeletas, si son o no son, se invaliden, se cancelen, y eso lo suele determinar las autoridades locales en función al partido que gobierna en ese momento. Pues obviamente puede haber un bias, ¿no? Puede haber una poca objetividad. Pero ese momento de interpretación de los resultados, de la anulación de las papeletas, que sería muy, muy peligroso, podría generar desde luego incertidumbre y me atrevería a decir incluso que cierto descontrol social, donde hayan focos de violencia, donde hayan gente, miles de personas que salgan a la calle, y eso podría ser muy, muy peligroso. ¿Por qué? Porque el presidente Trump ya lleva 3 semanas diciendo que le van a robar las elecciones y que se la van a robar a través del voto por correo. Y está cuestionando por primera vez en la historia de Estados Unidos la legitimidad del proceso electoral, lo cual es increíble porque el voto por correo lleva utilizándose en Estados Unidos desde la guerra civil para que los soldados pudiesen votar cuando estaban en el frente, ¿no? Pero ¿por qué hace todo esto? Esa es la clave de entender, para entender su actitud. Lo hace por una sencilla razón. Porque haciéndolo y creando dudas sobre el sistema electoral norteamericano, aunque pierda las elecciones, gana él personalmente. Hemos visto en las declaraciones del New York Times que cuando analizaron su declaración de impuestos que tiene más de 500 millones de deudas personales. Tiene numerosos casos judiciales en contra de él que han estado totalmente congelados ahora mismo por el aforo que tiene él, obviamente por la inmunidad como presidente del país, pero en el momento que deje de ser presidente vuelve a ser vulnerable desde un punto de vista jurídico. Necesita poder político y económico. Entonces, ¿de qué se habla ahora mismo? De que esta podría ser una nueva era donde un expresidente, por primera vez en la historia de Estados Unidos, siga teniendo muchísimo poder político. Podría utilizar ese 42% de la población que es incondicional al presidente para lanzar un grupo de medios, o se habla también de un grupo de servicios financieros para ese sector de la población, donde tendría un poder descomunal. Sobre todo porque no existe ningún otro líder político en el Partido Republicano en estos momentos que le pueda hacer sombra, ¿no? Entonces podría él seguir siendo muy relevante diciendo me robaron las elecciones. Entonces, la primicia de todo esto, que poca gente lo sabe y no lo he visto todavía en los medios de comunicación en España ni en Europa, técnicamente podría presentarse a las elecciones del 2024. Son 2 términos en Estados Unidos. Él habría terminado el primero, solo te puedes presentar a 2 elecciones, esta sería la primera de reelección y la segunda podría ser en el 2024. Para ese entonces tendría 78 años, la edad de Biden, o sea que no lo descartemos por edad. Pero sobre todo, que creo que sería lo más probable, podría estar preparando con ese poder político de quitar y poner jueces, pero también en estos estados claves intentar tener influencia política para poner y quitar gobernadores y candidatos, podría preparar el camino para una saga familiar donde su hija o uno de sus hijos pueda ser el candidato. Con lo cual concluyo un poco diciendo que no es el fin de Trump después del 3 de noviembre, aunque ganemos nosotros de forma estrepitosa, y que la situación es francamente un poco confusa de cara a lo que puede ocurrir después del 3 de noviembre. Habiendo dicho todo esto, estamos en un momento fantástico, maravilloso de la historia de Estados Unidos. Estamos en un momento kairos. La antigua filosofía griega decía, o tenían 2 términos para entender el concepto del tiempo. Ellos medían o decían que el tiempo era cronos, cuando es un tiempo lineal que se puede medir un día, un año, un siglo. Pero luego tenían una palabra para describir el tiempo distinta que hoy ya no se usa en nuestra cultura, que es el momento kairos. Y para los griegos el kairos era cuando algo pasa, todo cambia y ya nada volverá a ser igual. Y estamos ante un momento kairos, donde está en juego la democracia de Estados Unidos y está en juego el nuevo orden mundial. Y por eso digo que, pero yo soy optimista y creo que estamos en un momento fascinante de la historia, porque la pregunta que nos tenemos que hacer, francamente, no es qué va a ocurrir el 3 de noviembre, si será o no un momento kairos, lo va a ser. Lo que tenemos que pensar es que no podemos cometer el mismo error que se han cometido en el pasado, porque lo que está en juego es la prosperidad, la justicia y un mundo mucho mejor para las próximas generaciones. Con lo cual soy muy optimista de que el sentido común y la lógica volverá a la Casa Blanca. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Juan.
Hola. Hola. Hola.
Juan, parece que tenemos algún problema técnico porque María Jesús acaba de desaparecer de la imagen. Muchas gracias por tu intervención, que ha sido muy interesante realmente y creo que nos ha ayudado a comprender mejor cómo es el mecanismo, ¿no?, de las elecciones y las claves precisamente de esas elecciones norteamericanas. No sé si se puede conectar ya María Jesús para continuar con esta jornada, con la siguiente actividad de la jornada. Vamos a esperar un momentito a ver si puede conectarse.
No sé si sigo yo en línea.
Sigues tú en línea, sí, efectivamente.
Muy bien, no, pues yo quizás en lo que se vuelven a conectar un poco para concluir mis comentarios, os diría que ese optimismo cauteloso del que hablaba anteriormente y que se respira aquí en Washington, en el Partido Demócrata, es real, pero no podemos olvidar que todo puede ocurrir, ¿no? Y desde luego sabemos que en los próximos días, de hecho, las encuestas van a ajustarse mucho más y llegaremos al martes con una situación un poquito menos holgada que hasta ahora, con lo cual seguimos pensando que la participación es la clave y lo que estamos haciendo es llevando a cabo una campaña de movilización ciudadana sin precedente alguno en la historia de Estados Unidos. Todo el dinero que hemos recaudado, y hemos recaudado por primera vez en mucho tiempo más dinero que los republicanos, se está utilizando en esa movilización, puesto que es la clave para entender qué puede ocurrir el 3 de noviembre, el próximo martes. Yo, si me dais el visto bueno, puedo seguir hablando, ¿eh? Esto es un tema que me apasiona muchísimo, que vivo muy de cerca y podría hablar durante horas.
Pues Juan, si tenemos todavía unos minutos hasta la siguiente actividad.
A lo mejor si hay preguntas por parte del público o de parte tuya, Rosa, estaré encantado de contestarlas.
Muy bien, pues es que precisamente estoy intentando localizar a María Jesús para ver qué problema ha tenido, pero bueno, entre tanto, pues si quieres, la verdad, siempre me ha llamado la atención del sistema de elección norteamericano el hecho de que el periodo de votación pueda prolongarse tanto en el tiempo. ¿Tú crees que eso realmente influye en el resultado de las elecciones?
Sí que influye y es un sistema complejo que requiere de una inyección inmediata de modernización. Todavía en Estados Unidos, como comentaba, primero son 50 estados, cada uno tiene leyes electorales distintas con una serie de directrices federales, pero son muy distintas en cada estado. Luego son distintas por condados, luego son distintas por municipios, o sea, es muy, muy complicado todo, ¿no? Pero lo que te diría al respecto es que incluso algo que suele sorprender en Europa, ¿no?, es que en algunos estados que la gente ha estado votando por adelantado, ya sabemos los resultados. Sería impensable, porque diríamos, oye, es que si sabemos los resultados puede afectar el resultado final,
claro.
Saber si ya sé que van a ganar los demócratas, pues ¿para qué me meto? ¿Para qué voy a votar? ¿No? O viceversa. Con lo cual, las leyes son muy distintas en cada estado, ¿no? Yo te diría que, sin embargo, la parte buena del sistema, alguien me preguntaba esta mañana que por qué el Partido Demócrata había elegido al señor Biden con 78 años, ¿no? Y la respuesta que le di, os la comento rápidamente, y es que eso es lo que funciona de Estados Unidos, porque el Partido Demócrata no eligió al señor Biden. El sistema electoral es de listas abiertas, que no tenemos en España, y esa es mi gran crítica hacia la democracia española, porque nosotros no votamos en España por nuestros políticos, votamos por unas siglas del partido, y el partido tiene una lista cerrada. No siempre van los mejores, ni los más populares, ni siquiera los más preparados, desafortunadamente, ¿no? En Estados Unidos el sistema es muy distinto, y cualquier persona se puede inscribir a las primarias, quien sea, sin pedirle permiso al partido. Él elige sobre qué partido. Y va y busca recursos y busca gente y moviliza gente y se presentan las elecciones primarias y el partido no puede involucrarse en las primarias. Es más, irían a la cárcel los directivos del partido si se meten. Y eso hace que al final gane el que tiene que ganar. Entonces la gente me pregunta, ¿por qué no habéis elegido el partido o por qué no habéis buscado uno más joven, más cercano a Obama? Porque no podemos. Porque es el proceso de primarias es sagrado, ¿no? Y el que gana las primarias se hace dueño del partido y no viceversa. Y eso hace que...
Perdona, Juan. Me comentan que María Jesús ha perdido la conexión de Wi-Fi en su casa, por eso no está.
Sí, sí, ya me imagino que ha sido un problema técnico.
Ley de Murphy total, ¿no? Lo que no quería que pasara.
Pues pasa.
Muy bien, estupendo. Ángel.
Hola. Estamos teniendo unas dificultades con María Jesús Laos, que se ha desconectado, perdonad. Juan, yo quería preguntarte sobre todos los efectos de la desinformación que ocupan, sobre todo en las elecciones políticas, ¿no? ¿Qué papel juega la desinformación y cómo juegan los partidos políticos en este sentido?
Muy buena pregunta, porque el hecho de que existe campañas organizadas y muy bien financiadas de desinformación o fake news es una realidad absoluta, incuestionable, ¿no? Ya en las últimas elecciones sabemos a ciencia cierta y sin la más mínima duda que los rusos, por ejemplo, jugaron un papel en las elecciones norteamericanas. No sabemos si fue determinante para darle la victoria a Trump, pero sabemos que participaron, sabemos que mostraban favoritismo hacia Trump, ¿no? Y lo estamos viendo, por ejemplo, ahora también en la Florida. En la Florida, mucha gente me pregunta, oye, pero vale, vais a ganar el 72-74% del voto hispano. Pero ¿cómo se puede explicar que el 25% de los hispanos sigan votando por un señor que ha metido a los niños en jaulas, que ha separado a miles y miles de padres de sus hijos? Todavía hoy hay 500 y pico niños que no encuentran a sus padres. ¿Cómo es posible que los hispanos voten por una persona que dijo que todos los mexicanos eran violadores, asesinos y criminales, y que a lo mejor había alguno que otro honesto? O sea, es impensable para muchos, ¿no? La respuesta tiene que ver con las campañas de desinformación. O sea, ¿qué hispanos apoyan en Florida, por ejemplo, a Trump? Los cubano-americanos y los venezolano-americanos. Pero sorprende, ¿no? Porque si hay alguien que debería reconocer a un dictador, sería alguien que haya sufrido el castrismo o sufrido el chavismo, ¿no? Porque son los mismos comportamientos: ataque a la libertad de prensa, populismo, utilizar las instituciones públicas para fines políticos. O sea, todo lo que estamos viendo en Estados Unidos en estos momentos, ¿no? La utilización de los jueces para politizar el sistema. O sea, todo esto está ocurriendo y está ocurriendo de una manera muy, muy sorprendente por un lado, pero preocupante por otra, ¿no? Preocupante porque puede ser el inicio del fin de la democracia en Estados Unidos. Y yo no creo estar exagerando, ni mucho menos. Es que lo hemos visto, es el manual del populista, bien de derecha o bien de izquierda, y es lo que está ocurriendo en Estados Unidos.
Yo tengo una pregunta, Juan. ¿No crees que el fake news ocurre por todos los medios de comunicación en el mundo mundial?
Hombre, yo creo... Muy buena pregunta, Frances. Muy buena pregunta.
Es obvio que tu cadena preferida es CNN, pero vamos a ver, yo creo que nadie sale blanco, nuclear.
No, pero hay una gran diferencia, si me lo permites. Yo creo que puede haber un corte ideológico en un medio de comunicación. Y de hecho lo hacen sin pedir perdón por ello, ¿no? Fox dice lo que dice y CNN dice lo que dice y no piden perdón por ello. Vamos, te lo dicen claramente, ¿no? Y apelan apelan a una audiencia que comulga con ellos, ¿eh? Pero eso es una cosa. Yo no sé si fake news es eso, o fake news es decir que el señor Biden es comunista, leninista, y poner los medios de comunicación vídeos donde aparece él con una bandera comunista, dándole un beso a una bandera comunista. Eso es fake news, primero porque es falso. Una cosa es que tú interpretes las noticias desde tu punto de vista ideológico, pero otra cosa es que hagas acusaciones falsas que no son verdad. El último ejemplo que os puedo dar, o sea, en el año 2016, con una serie de fake news que decían que Hillary Clinton y Bill Clinton eran criminales y que tenían a unos niños encerrados en un sótano, es que parece descomunal, pero es que lo pusieron en las redes sociales, pusieron vídeos y un señor cogió una ametralladora y fue a una pizzería en Washington a salvar a los niños. Es que eso es fake news. Y una cosa es fake news y otra cosa es el corte o la visión ideológica que pueda tener el medio de comunicación, que por supuesto puede ser de derecha o de izquierda, pero no... Mire, lo pongo de esta manera. Obama lo dijo una vez en España, hace 2 años, nuestra fundación lo trajo a una conferencia en España y lo explicó de una manera muy bonita y muy sencilla. Tú puedes tener 2 visiones distintas si estamos hablando de una silla. Y me puedes decir que la silla no tiene 3 patas, me puedes decir que es verde o es azul y podemos tener una visión distinta de la silla. Pero no me puedes decir que no es una silla. O es una silla o no es una silla. Y fake news es decir que una silla es una mesa. O sea, no es lo mismo, ¿no? Yo creo que esa es la gran diferencia, Frances.
Y es que yo encuentro que estamos, vamos, en manos de unos... o sea, uno no sabe dónde recurrir. No es solamente los Estados Unidos, lo estamos viviendo en España, lo estamos viviendo en todo el mundo, donde yo creo que mucho problema está y Javier Martín lo puede decir mejor que yo. Estamos en manos de la prensa y no hay una prensa totalmente, digamos, libre o que uno puede creer. Para saber algo hoy en día tú tienes que leer absolutamente todo y pasarte la vida leyéndolo para sacar tus propias conclusiones. Y es una pena, o sea, ¿sabes? Lo estamos
de acuerdo.
En todos lados, o sea, en el debate del Congreso lo hemos visto, vamos, o sea, la gente meterse con la prensa y que ya el periódico del conservador ya no es conservador y vamos, el país ha cambiado de color, o sea, para dar ejemplos así frívolos.
Sí, sí, sí.
Es realmente una pena que el medio más importante de comunicación hoy en día, que es la televisión, no tenemos una televisión realmente libre y ecuánime, donde en tu exposición hoy, que ha sido muy de un lado totalmente, que respeto mucho, pero no ha habido otra contraprestación de otro lado de esto. Y si yo estoy sentada escuchándote a ti, pues es que no tengo otra versión. O sea, terminaste dando una película de lo que es el sistema americano, que para muchos es muy importante porque hay mucha gente que no lo entiende si no eres americana, como yo, como tú. Es muy difícil de entender y ha sido fantástico oír la segunda parte. La primera parte comprendo que son tus ideas y tu modo vivendi, o sea, ¿sabes? Ganas dinero asesorando unos señores que son de un partido. Y bueno, pero, ¿sabes? Una vez más, estamos en un medio donde no hay una contrapartida de lo que uno ha dicho y otro no. Es una pena, a mi modo de ver, que estamos en manos de un medio tan importante como ha sobrepasado la radio casi en todos los países del mundo, que no tenemos, ¿sabes?, esa versión neutral de las cosas, ¿no? Pero bueno,
sí,
mi opinión.
Sí, sí. ¿Alguien más tiene alguna pregunta?
Os pido disculpas porque se me ha caído el internet en casa y he tenido que volver a reengancharme. Mil disculpas, mil gracias porque la rectora, el vicerrector y Frances han estado ahí pendientes. De verdad que os pido disculpas, pero estas cosas pasan con la tecnología. Y bueno, Ángel, que es el vicerrector y está haciendo de anfitrión, pues si quiere que dé paso al debate.
Doy paso al siguiente panel en el que escucharemos un debate entre los 2 partidos políticos que introducirá Miss France Aldrich. Cuando quiera, Miss France, por favor.
Well, I'm going to start in English because I didn't realize that this was going to be bilingual, and I hope that everybody will understand English, although I could translate it into Spanish. Good afternoon to all of our debaters, moderator, and members of the University of San Pablo, CEU. Before I introduce each of you individually, I'd like to take 2 minutes to talk about the American Club of Madrid. It was started around in the 1960s as an entity to connect thousands of Americans who were living in Spain at the time. We have continued up until today and plan to in the future its original mission to provide assistance to our members through a diversity of activities, including networking opportunities such as this debate, which we were very instrumental in getting going. It's taken a year, but we've done it in spite of COVID. We host lunches, seminars, need to know seminars. We have business leaders coming to talk, and we also have social gatherings, which for the business community and families. The U.S. ambassador in Spain is our honorary president, as Mike Brian mentioned. We also celebrate all of the American traditional holidays and events like Thanksgiving, 4th of July, Christmas, Easter, Halloween, etc. We support the NGO of the U.S. military called Toys for Tots. Membership is open to all nationality and ages, and also presents a great platform for businesses to get to know Americans living in Spain and Spaniards to get to know what our companies are doing. It's a great honor for me to be part of this great initiative. And in the name of the American Club, I would like to give special thanks to the university, fantastic staff, and thanks to Maria Jesus Lago, who has been with us through thick and thin, and we've made it. I think this week is a very important week. It's giving all of the people that are listening to us a great opportunity to hear about my original great country and its politics and its politicians. For the Republic, I thank Javier Martin, who is the president of the International Press Club of Madrid, who's going to be our moderator. For the Republicans, Mr. Andy Yalous,
thank you.
Yalous, president of the Republicans overseas in France. And for the Democrats, Mr. Stephen Toliver, former Tolliver, sorry, that's the Spanish coming out, former president of Democrats Board. I hope you all will enjoy this unique opportunity to hear the different political positions and that the presidential policies of both sides will come forth. The right and privilege to vote is a vital part of the democratic process in the United States and hopefully in the world. We are not aware of how lucky we are to have these rights when there are so many countries in the world which are these rights or this electoral process is constantly under scrutiny, sometimes fraudulent, sometimes violent, and we hope that the American elections next week will be peaceful and without problems. So my closing comment is this is a very important right which we should all exercise. Please vote, and thank you all very much. I turn the mic over to Javier Martin.
Hello? Hello. Well, I think that we are on the air, as we say on the radio, and I need to thank Frances for this wonderful introduction. And welcome everyone to maybe the last debate before the election, at least the last debate for the expatriates, no? I must say good evening, maybe good morning for some people overseas, depending on where you are. Frances did the presentations, but well, my name is Javier Martin Dominguez, president of the International Press Club in Madrid. And I'm going to moderate the debate between the two representatives that are there on the screen, representatives for the Republican, for the Democrat Party abroad, or two wonderful expatriates that they are going to speak in for the two parties. Thank you for the San Pablo CEU University, to the American Club, to Frances, and also to Toño Rodriguez for inviting me to this event. I must apologize for my Madrileño accent. It's a crossover with my New York accent of 10 years living in the States. And hope you can understand me. If not, you just raise your hand and I can reformulate the question. I must say that my first coverage of an American election, a presidential election, was in 1980. At that time, the incumbent was President Jimmy Carter, a Democrat, but the winner of the election in 1980 was finally Ronald Reagan, and I think it was the beginning of a new time on American politics. I think this is again the situation now, no? An incumbent, Donald Trump, that right now at this moment today is behind the polls, but nothing has been decided yet. So I think this debate and all the debates that people are having in the States before voting are very important to make these last minute decisions. We are, I think, just 5 days to go for the election. So, well, I would like to introduce again my partners here on the debate. On the Republican side, Randy Jallots, who is president of the Republican Overseas France. He's joining us from Paris.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for being there. He's a US and French attorney and is the founding partner of Euroligan Council Group. And for the Democratic side, Stephen Tolliver, who has a wide-ranging career in international business and also in communications. He's the former president of Democrats Abroad, based in Barcelona. And he lives in Spain since 1997. Then maybe he speaks Spanish even better than me.
Imposible.
Okay, well, we have very many topics to talk about. We already have the rules to talk between 3 to 5 minutes. First, in the first part, the Republicans, then the Democrats, and then you can have a last comment on both sides. Our topics range from the influence of the repercussions of the COVID-19, the situation of the economy, the healthcare system, immigration, etc., etc. But before we start the regular debate, I think it's good if you have a first word as a statement, no, of how do you see the position of your candidate or how the campaign was about. Well, you have a first time, not as questions, but just for a presentation of yourself. As I said before, we are going to start with the Republican side and then the Democrats. So in the first, I give the floor to Randy Jallots.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for organizing this wonderful debate and being able to participate in this international exchange we're having with Spain. And it's a big pleasure for me to participate. I represent the Republicans, and I think it's an important part for all our fellow Americans to understand that this is probably one of the most important, and I believe the Democrats are going to share the same view, elections in a few decades. And America has been very divided along party lines, and there will be key issues that Americans will be deciding on how to vote. For us, it has been important economic considerations, the way Mr. Trump has responded to the COVID crisis and is trying to save and rebuild our economy, especially also other issues that we'll get to will be regarding law and order. And these have been very key and important themes that have been recurrent on our side. Again, unfortunately, we've faced massive criticism, whether it be from media, because again, we know there's left-wing media dominates international and national news. We're also facing social media on their side that has been censoring the Republicans along different cross-border actions, whether it be through donations, websites, Twitter, Facebook, and we've also just had our website that the Republicans defaced yesterday, and it's under investigation. So we've been facing a lot of cyber harassment. So those are issues, and naturally, it'll be a very, very interesting election. And I think at the same time, you can look at the polls. The polls continue to show, as our dear moderator was saying, that Trump is slightly behind. Again, if we look back in 2016, do not forget national polls do not reflect the reality. It's much more important to look at state polls, and along state polls that accurately represent that Trump is ahead in Florida, in Pennsylvania. Those are the swing states that will make the big, big difference. And in any case, what's important is in 96% of the polls nationally in 2016 were wrong. So again, nothing is decided, and we are very confident in going into the election. Thank you. I'll have Mr. Tolliver naturally present this. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead now, Stephen, from the Democratic side.
Great. Good afternoon. Thank you to CEU San Pablo University and the American Club of Madrid for organizing this debate. Thank you, Dr. Martin, for acting as moderator, and thank you to Ms. Aldrich for the kind introductions. And hello to my counterpart, Mr. Yellow. Most of all, I would like to thank the audience members for attending this debate. Their interest in politics of our country, of the United States, is very important, very much appreciated, and I hope to honor your interest by providing my perspective on the 2020 race and what's at stake in it in a way that you find beneficial and illuminating. For any overseas viewers and voters in the audience, given the lead time required to mail in your ballots after the sabotage of the U.S. postal system perpetrated by the Trump administration, I hope that you already voted. I hope that you voted for Democratic candidates at all levels so you can help us turn the page on this current disastrous chapter in American history and begin a new and better era. Unlike what seems to be the de facto policy of the Republican Party to suppress votes and intimidate voters, my party, the Democratic Party, believes that the more voices that are heard, the more people that are able to cast their vote, the stronger our government, our society, and ultimately our world will be. Through Democrats Abroad and our voter assistance website, votefromabroad.org, which is open to Democrats, independents, and yes, Republicans, we fulfill our mission by helping Americans overseas exercise their right to vote. In case any voters have had any problems in receiving or submitting their ballots, it's important to remember that there's an alternative. The federal write-in absentee ballot, or which goes by the acronym FWAB, which can be used to make your vote registered and count. Please visit votefromabroad.org for more information. In looking at the history of presidential elections in the US, it becomes apparent that our system is almost by default, it prefers to re-elect a president. In fact, in my lifetime, which is getting longer than I care to admit, there have only been 2 presidents who have run and were not re-elected for a second term. So when a president runs for re-election, it is in fact a referendum on their performance. Is the economy improving? Is our standing in the world more secure and respected? Do Americans feel that the president is working to improve their lives, protect their families, and create a better future for the next generation? And that classic formulation, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Those are the normal criteria when considering whether or not to re-elect a president. Now, when a voter honestly considers these questions, there can be no doubt that Donald Trump and Mike Pence have utterly failed on all these questions and more. They have led the most inept, disastrous, and corrupt presidential administration in the history of our country. Tonight, we'll explore as many of those failures as time allows, but clearly we can only scratch the surface of the malfeasance and mendacity of the Trump-Pence administration. But one thing is clear, the American people do not deserve to suffer at the hands of this criminally incompetent administration a moment longer. They have had their chance to deliver for the American people, and they have squandered it. But Americans are practically hardwired towards positivity, and in this dark moment of a mismanaged pandemic, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are the hopeful, positive answer that we need. You know that Joe Biden has overcome personal tragedy, and this has given him an amazing capacity to really see and connect with ordinary people with respect and compassion. Kamala Harris has been a forthright prosecutor, a state attorney general, and a groundbreaking senator. She is cool under pressure, she is well prepared, and she's ready to lead. But Joe and Kamala are not going to sugarcoat bad news. It's going to take straight talk to get us out of all on the same page and point the way out of the mess that the current administration has left us. That's what real leadership is about. That's what a Biden-Harris administration will be about. To outline some key elements of the Biden-Harris program, these include a national testing program to defeat the COVID pandemic, drive-through program testings, hiring 100,000 workers to do contract tracing, ramping up production of personal protective equipment, which our healthcare professionals are still reusing and using far too longer than is recommended. Joe Biden demonstrates and talks about how wearing a mask can save lives. If Americans from this point on, this winter, wear masks all the time, it could save up to 100,000 lives. In the Biden administration, Dr. Fauci and the other scientists will be listened to and respected so that their knowledge will be shared with others. And so when we finally have a vaccine, the people can trust that it's safe and effective. And of course, we can't talk about the pandemic and not mention healthcare and insurance. The Affordable Care Act is providing healthcare to people that previously didn't have it, but it's under threat. And soon the Supreme Court will be hearing arguments within 2 weeks that may undermine the ACA and take healthcare away from millions of people in the middle of a pandemic. Healthcare is a human right, and it's a shame that the US, a country that spends more on healthcare than any other country, has tens of millions of people without adequate healthcare. That has to change. And Joe Biden's plan calls for a public option for healthcare that will extend coverage to millions of uninsured and underinsured Americans, and people desperately need this.
Okay.
I would just like to close in that, I could obviously go on, but in short, Joe Biden. Could I just?
Such introduction, wasn't it?
I have one more comment to make, and I will.
It's introduction. We'll definitely get into the topics. That was the cue, just introduction. We'll get into all those topics. Don't worry about that, right. Stephen. We'll get into all the topics. I let the moderator.
We'll let the moderator speak. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the both presentations. Straight to the point, along party lines, obviously, and I just wanted for you, to get to express yourself and to fix your points, but the debate really starts now. So we are going, the first topic that we decided is the response to COVID-19. The US is the country worst hit by the pandemic. Around 200,000 people has died so far. What can we say? Is this the result of bad politics, a miscalculation of how to do things? Will affect this directly of the number of voters, for example? What about the use or not, that it was mentioned, of the masks and the contagious situation, even from the president? So there are all these topics around the same question. What is the effect of COVID-19 in the campaign? And because this is the first point to discuss, we start again with Randy with the Republican side, and then Steve has his turn. All right?
Thank you. I'd like to start off with the Democrats are very fond of Theodore Roosevelt and what he has to say. And this, I'm going to say a little saying that he has. Whenever you're asked if you can do a job, tell them, certainly I can. Then I get busy and I find out how to do it. That's the COVID crisis. The COVID crisis is about a crisis that never hit humanity before. Now, when it first appeared in China in the summer of 2019. It was downplayed by the Chinese regime that hid that there was human transmission until February, March of 2020. They left their international airport, Wuhan open regarding the epicenter, and they let people travel millions and millions across the world where it was spread. Now, Biden said when Mr. Trump closed down and banned travel to China on 31st of January 2020, he said, Mr. Trump was racist, xenophobe, and he says it was ridiculous. He was acting totally on an unfounded basis, and he kept on saying that for 2 months until he realized that he was wrong, and that Mr. Fauci has recognized that he saved even millions of lives, because people have predicted, many scientists and experts have predicted there'll be at least 2 million deaths because of COVID. That's the first step of Mr. Biden's major contradiction going forward. And he continues to downplay everything that Mr. Trump has been saying. Everything Mr. Trump has put into place, millions of masks, respirators, all medical equipment has been put into place to make it available to the American public since the beginning of the crisis. Even when it was in New York, to give you the example of what the Democrats are unable to manage or they're inefficient, is in New York, the governor and the mayor were given a hospital ship was made available with 1,000 hospital beds. This military vessel was sitting in the port for nearly 2 months and remained almost empty. Only a few dozen beds were used and no one used them. It ended up leaving because it was empty. So you can understand the total inefficient manner of dealing with this problem. The Democrats have promoted the close down and the shutting down of economies across the country since the beginning of COVID. Now, the World Health Organization is saying that the preferred matter is trying to keep the economies open and not to do a full shutdown. And that's the recent shift from the World Health Organization's position on COVID. What we also have to understand, Mr. Trump, regarding America, has made healthcare available to all Americans. Everything is paid by government, uninsured or whether insured. All Americans have been covered. All pre-existing conditions have been covered during the COVID crisis. So all Americans were dealt with and helped in the time of need. In addition, Mr. Trump has also promised, and his administration is delivering on getting a vaccine now. 10 programs are in the process of being furthered and being studied by the FDA, and there are millions and billions of dollars are being spent for that, and they will be made free and available to the American people. At the same time, how is he protecting Americans? There have been several health packages that have been passed. Unfortunately, the Democrats are blocking a negotiation in the House. They're going to say it's us, but I'm not going to argue anymore because there's going to be no solution regarding before the election on finding another aid. But what has he done to help Americans to make sure if they lose their employment? He has been helping the Americans, saying that he's banned evictions across America. All Americans will stay home. Even if they lose their jobs, they cannot be put in the street. And he's banned evictions across the board until the end of the year. Now, what have the Democrats done when there was a crisis in 2008? Everybody expected unemployment to go up to 20%. It went up only to 14%, given Mr. Trump's reaction and the administration's quick response to COVID. Within 5 months, it brought down unemployment to 7.9%. It created 11.5 million jobs within 5 months. 50% of the unemployment went down for the jobs that disappeared. Now, for the same number of jobs that disappeared after the 2008 recession with Obama and Biden, that took them nearly 2 years to have that same type of result. Now, you're going to say to yourself, what's going to happen in the future? We're going to have to deal with this situation. And again, it's not because the Democrats have been promising that we'll have a mandatory mask wearing that's going to help. It's recommended, and each state needs to consider its own situation. You're not going to go into Montana if they've been playing with this issue of a mandate across the country. But go to Montana, into the mountains. You're going to have someone wear a mask when there's no one around. No, each state needs to adapt its own program. Why don't the Democratic governments in the states and governors decide to have their own mandates and take responsibility for their situation, because they want to just blame. They shut down the economies, and each of them has been saying they'll be opening up their economies within the next week or two. Purposely, they're waiting to the end of the elections to open up their economies. Very strangely, and a few of them have even clearly on the record have said they'll do it by next week. So it shows you that they have been shutting down the economy at the expense of the American people. The Americans are not naive. They know what the Democrats are doing regarding those issues. And again, he's been helping the Americans throughout this crisis. And again, you can rely on Mr. Trump and his programs for bringing America back on its feet economically, health-wise. He said he'll be there. He'll continue to support them health-wise. And he's been there across the board. And because our dear Democrats, I'll finish up the point, is that they're going to say, well, he's a liar, because he downplays. What's downplaying is trying to say, be confident and be strong. He had COVID. He can go back to Americans that he dominated, and he was able to have proper treatment. The treatments that he took are not going to be proposed to Americans, and they're being made available to the Americans as part of the treatments that will go forward for treating COVID. So thank you very much, and I appreciate your time.
Okay, we can see this is a very, very hot topic, not only in Spain, also in the US. It's a very important topic. And now we go to the other side to see what the Democrats, maybe speaking up a little bit louder.
Yeah, I saw the comments that my mic was not picking up. You're hearing me okay now?
I think so. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to start off with a number. 226,613 people died as of yesterday. 8.7 million cases. 500,000 new cases within the last week. These are off the charts. And Trump keeps saying that we're rounding the corner. We're going off the cliff. The United States represents 4% of the world's population, and yet we represent 25% of the cases. That points to gross failure, gross negligence. My counterpart says that COVID came out of the blue, that there was no forewarning of it. That's completely incorrect. Bill Gates has been warning for years about the potential for a mass pandemic of this nature. The Obama administration left available to the incoming administration a 70-page plan to how to deal with that. That was ignored. So it is not correct that this was unexpected. But the Trump administration preferred to ignore the warnings and try to keep the stock market boosted up. We have the tapes of Mr. Trump speaking with Robert Woodward, in which he admitted in February that they knew that the virus was lethal, much more lethal than the flu. They knew that it was airborne, but he continued to state to the American people that there was nothing to worry about. One day it was going to disappear like a miracle. It was like the flu, and he continued on that tack, and he's back to it now, even though he got incredible health care, top-of-the-line health care that is not available to all Americans, as my counterpart believes. Yes, he did impose Chinese travel ban in from China that was full of holes. 40,000 people came in from China after the ban was declared. So it wasn't really much of a ban. But then in a tweet and comments, Mr. Trump said that there would be a travel ban imposed from European travelers at the drop of a hat. This was incredibly reckless. What it did is force people who were here on vacations and even exchange students to rush to the airport, crowd into airports in a panicked flight back to the United States. It's just an incredible amount of mismanagement. He's laughed at Dr. Fauci. He's laughed at people who wear masks. He's ridiculed it. And now on the campaign trail, he's become the super spreader in chief. In many of the recent rallies around the country that he insists on holding, there have been noted spikes in cases. And this leads to need to consider, the definition of manslaughter. What is the definition of manslaughter? It's the willful disregard and causing wanton death. And it could be leveled at the president that he is committing attempted manslaughter by his continued ignorance of the facts. You can go back to the PPE issue. He had the states bid against each other. States were competing on an open market against the federal government and against each other. Meanwhile, Jared Kushner said, "Oh, we're sitting on the equipment because it's our equipment." It's complete mismanagement.
Okay, we agree on a crossover. I don't know if you want to make a new comment on this subject, or we can go to the next one, Randy.
Well, no, I think we can go to the next subject. I don't have I think I stated clearly my position. We show that there's a deep difference in our approach from both of us. I don't have a specific issue.
Okay, so we go forward. It's not the order that we planned at the beginning, but I think I'm going to give a jump, because if we are going to talk about the economy or the healthcare system that are part of the conversation, it will be almost on the same subject. And if you don't mind, we can move on to race relations. No other slogan was more important, I think, this last year as Black Lives Matter. Everybody hear it all over the world. And there are issues very important in this last campaign, like police brutality, que put the debate about racism in the front line. Will the black vote be determinant, be totally important for the final decision on the presidency? Or you don't see necessary that mobilization? Do you think the black people really are going to go to vote? And what about, and I included here, what about the Hispanic vote that is even numerically more important than the black vote? What do you think about these subjects? And now we are going to start with the Democratic side. Okay?
Very good. Thank you very much for that setup. Yeah, in race relations, Donald Trump's record is clear. He's normalized neo-Nazis and white supremacists after the Charlottesville demonstration, and continued to support movements like the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo. Malignant racists now feel completely emboldened, but we live in a different era. We live in a multiracial world. White children need to be respectful. They need to know how to deal with their neighbors, and teaching hate, preaching violence and terrorism should not be a part of that. In our country, we have the unfortunate legacy and aftermath of slavery. That's, it's an open wound in our society that needs to be healed. There's, I believe the number of the Black population in the United States is some 12%. And in terms of deaths at the hands of police, they represent 25%. So clearly, Black men are being treated disproportionately harsh. In another regard, that doesn't get a lot of coverage in the news, the incidents of Black teenagers and even Black children committing suicide is at an all-time high. It's increased greatly in the last 20 years, according to Pediatrics magazine. It's up by 70% in the last 20 years. Obviously, there are a number of factors that go into it, but certainly the discourse that's been coming out of the White House does not make these children feel like they have a future in the country and a place. And compared to that, Joe Biden connects with everyone. He connects with people of all races. And we need to turn the page. We need an honest accounting of our past in order to have a better shared future. Of course, during the protest, the slogan of defund the police came out. Joe Biden completely rejects that statement. He's cognizant that police forces around the country are tasked with doing any number of jobs that do not relate to policing, social services, mental health care. The police forces are overburdened, and so we need to have better funding for these other auxiliary supports so that the police can focus on what they do. But also we need to demilitarize the police. In the last 10 years, the amount of military-grade equipment sold and used by police forces is really unprecedented. It's off the charts, and it totally defeats the purpose of having officers who are a part of their community that can have open interactions with the people that they're serving. Good police officers know that. Unfortunately, there's a few who feel this gives them license to lord themselves over others. Those people need to be removed from the police force and adequate training involved, and that's what the Joe Biden administration platform will be about. Thank you.
What about the Republicans? What do you think about the influence of the Black vote, of the Black mobilization for these police brutality actions, etc.?
Okay. Black Lives Matters has been put on the table as a dividing line to create a division across America between different ethnic groups in the USA. You have to understand the focus that the Biden administration, Democrats wanted, is to create a division where they can pit one ethnic group against the rest of the United States. What makes the difference of issues regarding differences that the Hispanic Americans wouldn't have regarding issues of consider alleged racism? You don't think the Hispanic community also has issues? Why don't we say that Hispanics' lives matter also? That's what I would think of the question that's very important to Hispanic Americans. Why are we just focusing on African Americans? Why don't we just talk about Asian Americans? Because the issue is we have to get down to the bottom line. Why has it happened? Let's go back to the incident which put America under fire. We had the cities destroyed, buildings, rioting, murder of innocent people since May after Blake again and George Floyd. Now, let's give you the example. Mr. Biden went to the family of Mr. Blake. Mr. Blake attempted to kill police officers with a knife, and he was going to the car and he was summoned to stop by several officers, several seconds. He disregarded those warnings. He went into his car and he tried to get a knife and he was shot by the police. And you say he was shot in the back. No, he was going to get his knife and the police officers were shooting at him. And they, instead of letting the police do an investigation, Mr. Biden went up to the family and is saying, oh, there's systemic racism across police forces in the United States. Do you know how many Afro-American and Hispanic Americans are in the police forces in America. They represent a large percentage of police officers across cities in America. Are you saying that their fellow African-American and Latin American, Hispanic American are all systemically racist against them? They're doing their jobs. If there's a few rotten apples, the investigations about individual police forces that's where the responsibility is. If you have an issue regarding a specific city, the mayor and the city council need to deal with it. If a state has an issue regarding its police force, it's a specific state. You can't blame the president. The president has no control over the state organizations and city organizations. We have several thousand police forces across the United States. Now, talking about, is Mr. Biden really someone who favors African Americans? He's called the African Americans, when they were dealing with opening up schools to different districts, he says it's a racial jungle. That's what he called African Americans. When he talked about a commentator in New York a few months ago, he said, "You ain't black if you vote for Trump." That's what he says. He considers that the African Americans don't have enough intelligence to make up their mind between voting between Republicans and Democrats. He was even considered by Mrs. Harris during the Democrat debate that took place at that time. She even criticized him and underlying accusations saying that he was a racist. She said he had ambiguous relations with segregationists when he was a senator. So, and do you think it's really responsible for Mrs. Harris, who's supposed to be the next vice president? She calls all police officers, we know what she calls them. She treats them to be KKK members. Now, you say Mr. Trump hasn't been clear regarding white supremacy. Mr. Trump has designated the KKK as a terrorist organization. It has been on record because we're getting systemic claims of racism and unfounded claims by the Democrats saying that he's a racist. 38 times we went through his entire rallying and meetings in the last year, and 38 times he's acted against and said that he is against white supremacy, 38 times. And the video just came out and was released, and you can go for yourself and go listen to it specifically. If 40 times is insufficient for you, I don't know how many times you need to hear it from our president that he says he is against white supremacists. And if they act illegally against the law, they should be dealt with properly. So when I don't consider that to be clear from that point of view. Now, is Mrs. Kamala Harris going to act in the interest of African Americans? She's only acting in the interest of her personal interest. When she was district attorney, she, in a city of San Francisco, where there was 8% African American population, the rest rate was 40% because she only wanted results, statistics, self-promotion. Against the same thing when she was the California Attorney General. It accounted for nearly 30% of the conviction rates for misdemeanors, compared to a 17% population in California. Again, statistics, self-promotion to show that she was getting the job done, even if it was against the African Americans. Now, Biden, why didn't you talk about the Violent Crime and Control and Law Enforcement Act in 1994, the three-strike policy? And Biden recognizes that he made a big mistake. They stuck African Americans for 25, 30 years. A poor American, as an example, Jerry Williams, was sentenced for 25 years of prison for stealing a piece of pizza. And that's just several thousand Americans. So I'm going to say to you that you have a lot of improvement to do on your side, whether it be Mrs. Harris and Mr. Biden when talking about race relations. It's a lot of blah, blah. When it comes to acts, you have a lot of work to do.
Okay.
Do I get
You want to answer back?
any of that? Yeah, I'd like to respond to a bit of that. The reason that Black Lives Matter is important as a slogan is because the history of our country, it starts with the Constitution. In the Constitution of our country, Black Americans were recognized, at least Black men, because women were not a part of the Constitution, were considered 3/5 of a person in order to form what is now our wonderful Electoral College. The interview that you mentioned earlier in this year, there was a free-flowing exchange. They were having quite a rambunctious time. And then after the fact, Joe Biden realized he had said something inappropriate, and he apologized the next day. Has Donald Trump ever apologized to anyone for anything he's ever done? I mean, being able to apologize shows the mark of a large person, of a generous person, which is not the current president. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Okay. I think this question really matters, no? It got very emotional.
I think
very important,
it gets
no?
emotional because, let me explain to you why it's emotional. I think it's emotional too because what they've done caused major issues regarding authority and police. Today we have in the streets across America, they're burning down, riots. People are afraid to go outside.
Do you know right-wing protesters?
Excuse me. No. It's left-wing Antifa groups that are going into those riots across the United States, and that has been established. So you can say what you'd like, and let me finish what I'm saying. You'll get your 2 minutes afterwards, Mr. Toliver. 1 second. Let me just finish up what I have to say. I have my 2 minutes of reply, and I'll let you say what you want to say. So again, they've been downplaying it, but they've been pushing Antifa. They haven't condemned it all these months. We've asked every time, even during the debates, do you condemn the actions of the Antifa across all the cities and where they've been violent? He hasn't said anything. Every time Mr. Biden has not been clear. And regarding police, they've created a situation where they say police are systemically racist. So what happens is, do you know it has gone up 40% police killings this year because of all this? They kill 40% more. And what's happening is police officers were attacked. For example, in Philadelphia yesterday, because of an issue there was regarding a killing yesterday, which was the police are investigating. You know how many officers were hurt yesterday, injured? 30 police officers were hurt. In addition, in Los Angeles, to show you, because of Black Lives Matters, you're creating hate in the African-American community that they're wanting to execute police officers. In LA, 2 months ago, we had an African-American that took a gun, straight into a car, and fired upon 2 police officers to execute them. Why is that? Because the Democrats have been irresponsible, and they haven't given the police. You see, Stephen, let me finish. I'm not interrupting you when you talk, please. I'm respectful of it. I know even if we disagree, I give you your time, even though I really, really disagree with many of the things you're saying. I don't want to interrupt, but because you're interrupting me, it sense that you have to justify yourself. So please, let me go to the end. It's important because the Americans need to know, and I believe the majority of Americans will see it. Do you know that 4 to 5 million women have bought firearms? It's an increase never in history in the last 6 months in such a short period of time because of the problems with law and order that were caused by the Democrats, and they've shed violence across America. And we have 70% of Americans believe that Trump is the strongest candidate on law and order by Gallup polls. So for you to say that the Americans won't follow you, the Democrats made a bad calculation, and it's going to be a losing point for you on these elections. Okay.
Well, I must say that it's not so easy to have an interaction with this screen.
No, but it's
systems.
okay. He can reply. It's okay. We give each other time. I think it's fair for Steve to reply, and I won't interrupt him. Go ahead, Steve.
Steve, you have a new term you want, or we jump into the new subject?
I started the segment. Randy had his turn. I replied. He replied. Did we want to continue on this one? Or?
Yeah, I think that we should move on into the next subject because if not, we consume all the time. And we are going to really move to another angle. We are going to talk about international relations. I think the world has become at least a little bit more tense during this presidency. I think there are many topics that we can analyze. No? For more Americans, this is a strong sign that the power of the US is not powerful enough. Others consider that we are in a new world, in a multipolar world that has to be confronted on different politics. What is the adequate answer to the menace of China, both in the economic and diplomatic world? What is the influence of Russia? Are the relations with the European Union too much questioned by the president right now? So there are many angles on the foreign relations of the United States. And I think that to elect one president or the other has to suppose a continuation or a big change on American politics abroad. What do you think about? We start now with the Republican side. It's your turn.
Thank you very much for the introduction and the question. It's a very important issue. Now, Going forward on international and foreign policy, bottom line, a big question remains, and Mr. Biden and Mrs. Harris have not replied to the conflict of interest that exists after the different evidence that's come out recently regarding his business relations with his son across China, Ukraine, Russia. And these issues need to be cleared up by the Biden administration, and additional evidence has come out that millions of dollars have gone through the business associate of Mr. Hunter Biden to confirm that he was actively involved in those businesses meddling, and there's peddling of influence has been done by Mr. Biden and his son to sell Mr. Biden's name during his vice presidency. And those issues haven't been replied to. He's just said there's a smear campaign. He hasn't denied the existence of those. Why is that important? Is that will he be able to act in America's interest regarding China when you have been receiving billions of dollars for just managing and getting fees from key business party members of the Chinese Communist Party? Now, he's always been saying that he will be softer and more understandable with China. Why? Because already has such a conflict of interest with China. Secondly, during the Obama and Biden era, Mr. Biden approved the entering of China without any restrictions into the World Trade Organization. What has that done? China has stolen industrial property rights, intellectual property rights, trade secrets from key nations in the European Union and the United States. Now, what's happening is the Trump administration is putting in place tariffs, renegotiating with the Chinese, and he's asking for the Chinese to reestablish and to rebalance the wrongs that were done to the U.S. economy. And it was recently a deal that was concluded earlier this year that helped us increase the tariffs on China. What has Mr. Biden said? Mr. Biden says he will bring down those tariffs. Again, against American interests. We're trying to bring back jobs back to America from China that were taken away. Again, unfairly, jobs have gone away. During the Biden era and Obama era, we had the NAFTA agreement. Again, that's been negotiated between Mexico and Canada. It's established a much more balanced approach for the US. We've lost millions of jobs to China because of Mr. Biden's and Obama's policies. In addition, NAFTA's also cost several hundred jobs to the United States. Jobs are coming back, and it's very, very important. Now, international politics are very, very important. Now, Mr. Biden, Mr. Obama, at the time when they were together, had decided that it was better to have an agreement with Iran. They returned $1.7 billion to the Iranian regime. What happened? ISIS war began. Iran started a proxy war in Syria, next to Lebanon, Yemen, across Africa, was sponsoring terrorism, and all the way into other areas of the world. It became, again, used those sources to spread havoc and terrorism across the world. What has Trump done? People criticized him, saying, oh, well, he's having this peace plan to go to America. No, he was able to have across the board with all Sunni Arab countries starting to have peace plans and stabilizing the whole region. Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, he's getting Saudi Arabia, who says they will be normalizing. We have Sudan, and there's at least another almost 7 to 8 other Arab countries which are going to normalize relations with the United States and Israel. And that will create large stability in the Middle East, which is very important, where our oil reserves and where there's been major, major issues. Mr. Trump has not engaged in any new wars. Mr. Biden and Mr. Obama had caused us to go into the Syria ISIS war because he had poor foreign policy with Iran, and Iran used its proxies across Iraq and Syria to have, again, a proxy war from that point of view. Now, dealing with the European Union, very important. He's reinforcing relations, but he's rebalancing interests. It's costing a little more money to NATO members, but that's part of his program, also saying America has contributed enough, and he felt that was necessary to reestablish. But does that mean he's trying to withdraw America from his NATO relationship? Wrong. Look at the crisis with Turkey and Greece. Everybody criticized Mr. Trump when everybody was saying when Greece and France were going against Turkey, they say, why is America supporting Turkey? 3 days later, tensions faded away. The problem disappeared. Why? Because he was very intelligent. He didn't want the Russians or the Chinese to take the place of the United States within NATO, within this problem, and to escalate further tensions in that region. So they went in, they negotiated, and they brought tensions down. The tensions have gone away. So again, that is another example of how we work with our NATO and European partners to find solutions. The US has been assisting France, as an example, in Africa to provide logistical support and intelligence against all the terrorist wars that they're having in Africa and North Africa against terrorist organizations. Again, working together with the Europeans to go against terrorism. Now, this is very important because, again, Mr. Trump has been criticized and he hasn't been given credit for all the international. Mr. Biden and Mr. Obama's foreign policy was very, very poor. I am sorry to say, you will see that no contribution has been able to bring anything to the table beneficial. Today, he's been able to stabilize the whole Middle East thanks to his policies on bringing these peace deals. And again, I'll have a little bit of a comment afterwards, but I'll let my other partner continue because time is running out. Go ahead.
Okay, let's see the vision of the Democrats about the foreign relations.
I'm operating under a certain disadvantage at this point because the organization I represent is an official part of the Democratic Party, and as such, when we're outside of the country, it's not really considered proper for us to criticize the policies of the current administration. Be that as it may, I think it's pretty clear that Mr. Trump does not understand the value of alliances, and he's consistently undermined NATO and belittled our NATO partners, thinking that we've gotten a bad deal from our investment in NATO, which is completely false and completely contrary. Having strong alliances makes for more stability in the world. When it comes to China and the tariffs, Mr. Trump has a fundamental misunderstanding of what tariffs do and who pays tariffs. The tariffs are paid by the consumers that buy the products. When someone buys a refrigerator that's been made in China and imported to the United States, China is not paying that tariff. A U.S. consumer is paying that tariff. So these are taxes that have been levied on the backs of the United States consumer. And Mr. Trump continues to doubt that. In the meantime, the U.S. farmers have seen their markets for agricultural products, including soybeans, shut down. And so what has Mr. Trump had to do? He's had to funnel billions of dollars to the U.S. farmers to support them after their major markets have been cut off. The major market of China has been cut off to them. Most recently, Mr. Trump was bragging at a campaign rally how Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping of China, Kim Jong-un of North Korea have endorsed Mr. Trump. Why would they do that if they didn't know that they can easily manipulate him, that he's not going to stand up to them? Thank you.
Okay, you have a turn.
Yes. Again, you've been clear regarding China and regarding Russia. Again, there's been sanctions, been cracking down on Russia, again, regarding issues that they have been interfering and taking a stance. Trump administration has taken a stance against Russia clearly regarding that. And again, agricultural issues, yes, he has. Agricultural issues, let's put things back on the table. Based on the lost industries that we have, the lost jobs, you don't address those things, but we've lost key industries, many, many jobs, because we've been looking at the agricultural part of our America has been suffering. So when he's negotiated with Canada, Mexico, and with China, those issues were raised, and they increased made different measures that helped the agricultural sector deal with those issues and increase the sales of those exports. For going forward on someone like Venezuela, the same thing. He's cracked down on Maduro regime at Venezuela. Our Latin American and Hispanics all have been victims of communism. They know what it is. We've been facing a radical left administration today. And that's what is being supported by the Democrat Party today, which they're trying to hide. And that's what's being shown. And many of the Latin Americans realize this. Let's just remind that today, statistics show that between Hispanic American compared to Hillary Clinton's election in 2016 is up by 12 to 14% among Hispanic Americans. For African Americans, we were at around 80% for African Americans. Today, it's down to 65% with Biden. You will see in these elections that people will trust Trump for moving forward and supporting this foreign policy. He's been strong on these issues, and unfortunately, many of the Hispanic American, Latin American have known and lived with communism. They don't want to see it again. There have been many, many Venezuelans, Cubans, etc., that have lived across these issues, and they've lived across these issues. They know what it's about. We're living similar types of measures when we're looking at it. The Democrats accept censorship. They allow social media to censor U.S. politics against the Republicans. The Twitter and Facebook are being used to illegally hamper with election integrity. They go on, censor messages, they block donation sites, they remove information given by the press. It's like the example with the Post. Now Twitter is being investigated, Facebook is being investigated regarding that. Websites have been also attacked by left-wing militants. Now, that's the way the Democrats do things. The left is violent. The left is violent, and that's what the Americans will face when they're dealing with this internet, with these different issues. And again, thank you again.
Okay, I don't know if there is a reply. People say of this president that he didn't start a war, but he removed the war. So sometimes maybe it's an effect, a direct effect of how the presidency moves around, that other conflicts are created.
Possibly. Mr. Obama inherited two ongoing wars that, fortunately, the war in Iraq, which was, a grave mistake in my view, has been ended. Just to touch on some of the points that Mr. Yao has made, Cuba, they've made great progress. President Obama had an opening with Cuba to increase dialogue, to increase trade, which Mr. Trump has shut down. So, if there's no engagement, there can be no persuasion to reconsider, to strengthen economic ties, to improve the lives of Cubans in Cuba. In terms of the Iran deal, that was a internationally established protocol with the European Union to engage with Iran to control and make sure that they didn't rush into production of nuclear fissile material that could be used for weapons. That agreement was working. That was keeping Iran in check. That agreement is the one that was torn up. So, which is quite unfortunate in my view.
All right, we saw both parts. I just wanted to give a reminder to the people who are following this debate that they can send us their questions or their comments on the chat that we have also in this system. And I try to get these questions and to forward to the panelists, either when we are talking about a specific subject or at the end of this debate. So we are going to be moving forward, and now we are going to be talking of a general topic where that is sometimes the most important in an election. They say that a president or a candidate, they can win the election or not, depending on how is the situation of the economy. Is the economy in a strong shape? Seems like the data say that there were 4 good years for the American economy. The stock exchange index went up. Now there is a recovery on the number of jobs after the big effect of the pandemic. So maybe this is a positive sign for the president, for the incumbent, or there are clouds on the future about the influence of the pandemic, about the situation of the conflict with the trade war with China, and also the trade war that we talk a little bit about it with the European Union and with other markets. What's going to be the influence of Brexit in the relations with the United States, talking about the economy. So now is the turn of the democratic sides. So, Mr. Tolliver, it's your turn again.
Okay. You know, if we go back in time 12 years ago, after the financial meltdown that happened under the watch of George Bush, right at the end of his presidency, which unfortunately Mr. Obama had to deal with an economic catastrophe that up until that point had been the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. Mr. Obama righted the ship, restabilized the financial system in the United States and in fact around the world, gave a lifeline to the US auto industry. When the stock market at that point was just below 8,000 points, it improved year by year until the end of his term. It had more than doubled in strength. So it's just a mark of the strong economy that Mr. Trump inherited from Mr. Obama. Then Mr. Trump took office, and really, you know, if you look at policy and policy achievements, Mr. Trump has only had one. That was his massive tax package, tax giveaway to the most wealthy Americans at the expense of the poorest Americans, to lower taxes on corporations, with the supposed idea, which was never structured into the deal, that those corporate tax savings would be trickling down to the salaries of the workers. Unfortunately, that never happened. I remember Mr. Trump talking about some $4,000 a year that American workers could expect to see in salary increases. That never happened. What that money ended up being used for, to the most part, was stock buybacks by those companies to inflate their stock portfolios, the value of their stocks, which increased the value of the portfolios of principally the executives that held their own stock. So there's that. Furthermore, Mr. Trump keeps talking about how wonderful the economy is doing, and just keeps referring mainly to the stock market, which unfortunately most Americans do not own stock, so they're unable to take benefit from that. In the long haul, of course, we have the COVID problems, but in the aggregate, Mr. Trump has presided over a huge amount of job losses. Roughly 10 million jobs have been lost under his watch, making him the first president since Hoover at the start of the Great Depression in the 1930s to be a job loser in his term of office. So clearly the touted benefits of having a businessman in the White House have not panned out for the average American, and his inept response to the COVID epidemic is just part and parcel of that, not understanding this whole talk about, oh, we have to open up the economy, we have to open up the economy no matter what, not understanding that unless the people feel safe that they can go out and shop, they can go to a restaurant and not catch a disease with a high amount of fatality rate attached to it, there's not going to be an economic recovery. So we first have to get the COVID virus under control, and then we can work on the economy. So in terms of the Biden proposal for economic growth, that is, number one, get the virus under control, and then number two, take advantage of climate change initiatives to spur job creation. Mr. Biden has a plan to devote large amounts of money into research and development, to things as diverse as capping unused mines that can get some people back to work, and then installing electric charging facilities for electronic cars, which have to be implemented under environmental foreseen regulations. So by taking advantage of the climate crisis, we can retool our industries promote green technologies, and get a lot of people back to work. Thank you.
Okay, for the Republican side, 4 more years of the same. There will be any changes on the economy. It's going to be good for the country. The policies.
Yes. Again, for the policies, as the policies have gone in the past, again, 82% of middle-class Americans have benefited from the tax cuts. Again, what is said by our fellow Democrats is misrepresented and is done on a repetitive basis many times. Now, going forward, let's try to analyze what's going to be happening. Is that we're going to have to face, and we're confident that we will be reelected, and we will have to have passed tax packages that will help the companies rather than increasing $4 trillion in taxes. Now, where is the logic behind that? Do you realize that not even Mr. Roosevelt during the Great Depression didn't increase taxes, where you hear Mrs. Harris and Mr. Biden saying they're going to increase by $4 trillion taxes. They're going to do away with all the tax cuts that were given by Mr. Trump. They're saying, oh, it's 400,000. No, they said they're going to take all the tax cuts, and they haven't been clear regarding that. And again, when we're saying that's going to bring, again, that it's going to increase taxes for 81% of Americans, those tax cuts. Now, how are you going to stifle growth because of those tax hikes? Now, we have a reduced rate for corporate taxes at 22, 23% with Mr. Trump. They will be increased to 28, 29%, again, by the Biden-Harris administration. That's what they're going for. Now, how can you imagine going to deal with the depression? Now, I'll give you a good example. When Roosevelt, because Roosevelt was considered one of the best presidents from the Democrat side, in 1937, 1938, when he tried to increase taxes, it backfired on him, and the depression came back, and he reneged on those tax increases. So again, the Democrats have no experience. Rather than spurring growth, they're going to hamper the growth that we need. They're going to increase taxes, destroy any possible initiative by small, medium-sized companies. In addition, they're talking to you about the new Green Deal. The new Green Deal, do you realize that it's going to be the prices? Now, they've said they're going to close down the oil industry, talking about the environment. They're going to close down without thinking what will be the impact on unemployment in the United States. 19 million jobs will be lost with the phasing out of the oil industry. And you've at least been clear during the debate, and finally, because they've been going back and forth. The same thing with fracking. They said no, they'll be against fracking. But you see why they're totally illogical, Democrats? Do you realize that the United States has reduced its carbon dioxide emissions by around 3% last year because of we've been doing fracking and using gas more than oil and coal? So where is the logic regarding the banning of fracking, as the Democrats have been saying? He's been playing back and forth, says, oh, I'm not going to ban fracking. But then Mrs. Harris has said it on different occasions. Even Mr. Biden has said it, and it's been recorded at different events. So the Americans cannot trust Mr. Biden's administration to save jobs and do a smooth transition. Invest in technology, as Mr. Trump has been saying, working with the automotive industry to reduce emissions. That's what's been happening. And again, everybody says that the Paris Accord has been a super deal. We've given China, that was negotiated by Mr. Biden and Mr. Obama at the time, they were given an exemption until 2030. They wouldn't have applied to them to have those those emission reductions. They could do what they want. So unfairly compete with Americans that would be restricted by higher limitations compared to China, which has already had many issues regarding controls, regarding environmental controls put in place. So there you have an issue regarding the cost of the various issues. The Green Deal issues also is going to create a loss of several million jobs, because they're going to want to change and put an end to the different industries that are promoting it. And do you realize to make an electric car, do you know to make how much energy that you need before using alternative energy? how much it costs to produce a car, the batteries. Do you realize how much we pollute by doing that? So the reality of having this alternative energies is not very, very established. And again, what's funny is that they've been closing down on nuclear energy as an alternative. For example, look at Germany, and where they're saying they've been green is that they've been opening up coal plants, and they've been criticized by even Greenpeace, saying it's horrible. They're opening up new coal plants, new oil, electricity plants for electricity purposes. Why? Because they just prefer to stop nuclear energy, which is clean fuel. Again, the French have also, because they're being pushed by an environmental push to stop nuclear energy. What is the alternative? There is no alternative for the moment. But again, it's demagogic to have that type of policy without thinking if there's an alternative. Will we be able to maintain economic growth with these alternative clean policies? No, they have to go in a transition. And again, the Biden and Harris administration, if they're elected, will tax, shut down coal, oil, and fracking in the United States. The Americans have been clear and understood that they will lose those states. There are swing states. Democrats do not realize that they're not taking into account the Americans' jobs. And there has been major improvements in emissions reductions, 3%, as I said to you. It's also one of the averages across the European Union have been around that, between 3 and 40%. So you can't say that America has been a poor performer. It's been on the medium and average player along this. So again, things have to be done in a transition where it's going to be radical. The radical left will have a radical agenda and will have radical consequences for our economy and the American people. They will pay the price election day. Thank you.
Well, talking about economy, you really put a finger on top of the green issue, no? And I wanted to know, as a part of the debate, and see the Democratic side, how the climate change has become an issue or not on this presidential campaign. This big clash between the negationists or the people who think that it's too expensive to change and the ecological-oriented people, no? Do you consider that this has been a big issue on the campaign and it's going to have an impact on the vote or not?
Well, it should, because I think it's quite a driver of the youth vote. The younger people are quite concerned about it. Amongst our members here in Spain, that's one of the primary things we get a strong reaction on from younger voters is the concern for the environment. Mr. Yelov mentioned the Green New Deal. That's a proposal by a congressperson and a senator. That's not Mr. Biden's program. Mr. Biden's program is distinct from that. Touching on the economic aspect of it, it's all geared to creating jobs, taking advantage of this imperative to get to climate carbon neutral. The Biden target is to make America carbon neutral by 2050. That's an ambitious target. 3% a year of emissions reductions is not going to achieve that. So we need something. We need a moonshot. We need to really go big. And so by stating out that marker, like President Kennedy did to go to the moon, we need to have an equally ambitious program. Otherwise, I saw a statistic the other day saying that in 50 years, the average temperatures for 3 billion people on this planet will be that of the Sahara Desert. Life will be unrecognizable at that point. And they'll look back people will look back at our generation when we had a chance to do something, when we had a chance to save the world, and we were content with 3%, when that's obviously insufficient. My counterpart has talked about fracking. Mr. Biden is clear. He's not approaching any sort of ban on fracking. And coal in and of itself is fading away as a technology. To refer to Mr. Trump's statements about wind power, He makes some really outlandish comments about it, that it causes cancer, that it kills the birds. This is not correct, not rational. Wind power, if you go to East Texas, it's a huge factor for creating power. Strides are being made in battery technology. With more funding in research and development, we can improve the battery technology so that we can distribute the power that's harvested intermittently by wind generators to capture that. And there's all sorts of technologies we can use. Yeah, they're not, they don't have the same energy equivalence as, say, an ounce of gasoline, which has quite a bit of kinetic force. But with more research and development, we can maximize that. Hydrogen fuel, for example, that is a clean burning fuel. The problem with hydrogen is the storage mechanism. But strides are being made in compressing hydrogen so that we can use that for car emissions, car fuel as well. But without a strong push, without an exceptional target to shoot for, we're not going to achieve that. And the Trump administration has embraced the fossil fuel industry and given it a green light, in terms of the environment. They're opening up protected lands for drilling. Their administration is stocked with climate change deniers. The Secretary of Interior is a former oil lobbyist. So, the Trump bona fides in terms of the environment are non-existent, and we need to make a change immediately. And that's why we're going to be winning. Thank you.
Okay, very big issue, the transformation of our world, really, the use of energy. We are going to jump, if you want, into another of very symbolic aspect of the Trump presidency. It all started with a wall, no? Let's talk about immigration. The president wanted to raise this wall in the frontier with Mexico. There has been a lot of news about illegal immigration. There's a big theme always in the state. You need the immigrants as a labor force. How is the relation with them, the legal situation? This is a big issue in states like Texas, like Florida. There are two places, big states, no, to grab those votes, those electoral votes. What do you think is going to be the influence of this question of the immigration in the final vote? We go to the Republican side this time.
Immigration has been an important issue, and we have to understand the bottom line issue regarding immigration. It's by organized crime, and organized crime has been taking advantage of innocent individuals in Latin America, Africa. They even come all the way from Africa through Latin America channels, the criminal organizations, to bring people and demand from them high sums of money to bring them into America illegally. Now, today, it is very, very important to establish a legal system of immigration that is controlled. Now, the Democrats are going to criticize the Trump organization for saying so, but we need to realize that during the Obama administration, there were tens and thousands of immigrants that came to them during that time period, and they never legalized their situation. They just were left as is in the United States. So it's very easy to say that today people are criticizing Trump because he's making hard choices regarding how we're going to deal with illegal immigrants that are already in the United States. But this is a fact that Mr. Obama and Mr. Biden let the entire immigration problem get worse over those years. Tens of thousands of illegal immigrants came to the United States, worked illegally, went to sanctuary cities, and they stayed there. Instead of trying to develop a fair immigration system where people will start working, getting visas, and regularizing their situation, no, they've left it as is. And that's why he was elected in 2016 to have a harder stance. Now, I know it's not easy for Hispanics and African Americans regarding immigration, because everybody feels that they're very, very concerned. And I understand. But the same thing now, how do we manage illegal immigrants and people that are living today for Americans? Now, the Biden administration is saying, well, we're going to legalize across the board all illegal aliens in the United States. Now, that's the solution to get elected. But they never did that during those 8 years being president for Obama and Biden. They let people sit in those different cities and just have this ambiguous situation regarding immigration. They're the ones that set up those cages where they're criticizing Democrats about the policies. Unfortunately, those few hundred children, we regret it, and I think it's very, very sad also for those children. They're going to be helped as much as possible by the administration. But again, those cages were constructed and made by the Biden and Obama administration. Now, if you legalize it, what happens? Okay, you have Americans that are there. They also want to give free health care to all illegal immigrants. That's what the Biden and the Biden and Harris position is going forth on that. Again, whether we be all segments of Americans, whether it be African Americans, Hispanics, realize that having health insurance is very, very important. But why not want to invest first in America and giving health care to Americans rather than saying we're going to give more and more to illegal immigrants? That's the ambiguity. And people are saying we need the help, not the illegal immigrants. We need to stop it and reduce it. And when we need employment, we need to control that immigration and that it be controlled upon the border. The wall, there was financing obtained for it. It's being hopefully constructed. It will proceed in the future. But again, it's to limit and control and avoid illegal trafficking, human trafficking for immigration, for organized crime. That's where it works. That's where everything is being done. If we establish a more equitable solution regarding when we need jobs and having immigration, and I think many people will benefit from it, but it has to come under control. It was out of control beforehand. No solution was proposed beforehand. And again, the measures that are going to be proposed to deal with it is just a general overall acceptance of all illegal aliens. And if that occurs, what's going to happen? Again, organized crime will work from Africa, Central and South America, and have people pay tens of thousands of dollars to cross the border illegally, risk their lives. People die, they get separated. If they're caught, they're in detention centers. It's a sad story for many immigrants that try to get here. They have to do things legally, and I think it's better to establish a fair immigration policy that we need to put in place. It cannot be uncontrollable and saying, overall, we'll let everybody in and we'll take care of everything like that. It's very easy to say by the Biden and Harris administration if they get elected, because that's what Obama was saying earlier when he was in power with Mr. Biden, and he didn't do anything. He just let things stand, tolerated it, and the problem was recovered by Mr. Trump, who's having a tougher stance. I know it's not easy. There are many personal sad stories regarding immigrants, and we realize that it's never going to be an easy solution on a personal basis for the individual that are facing these type of issues. Again, he's been hard against criminals. He said any aliens or immigrants that have committed crimes will be sent back to their countries. It's good. It's a good law. You have to be a law-abiding citizen. If you decide to commit a crime in the United States, you should go back to your country. It's not a place for you in America. So those are important things, and I think those are positive measures that the Trump administration has been doing. So I'll let Stephen take over and give his point of view on the rest.
Yeah, because this is a big issue, in an immigration country. And also because I mentioned Florida and Texas, but there are also some swing states as Arizona, for example, or maybe New Mexico, where this question is very influential. What is the vision of the Democrats?
Well, contrary to the portrait painted by my counterpart, the Democrat, our candidate is not in favor of blanket, open, illegal immigration. That is completely false. Mr. Trump has used this issue as a stalking horse, as a scare tactic for people. Ever since he rode down that elevator, it's been a scare tactic. During the midterm elections in 2018, you heard nonstop, oh, this caravan of illegal immigrants is coming up to Latin America. After the election, that ended, that disappeared. What the Trump administration has done in sabotaging the amnesty, the legal amnesty process, forcing people to wait in squalor on the other side of the Mexican border, where they are just left to their own devices, is inhuman. What has happened under the Trump administration to the children being ripped away from their parents, over 5,000 children, that wasn't an accident. That was a part of the plan. Parents were deported without their children. No system was put in place to track them. The 545 children who could not be reunited with their parents was part of their plan to deter illegal immigration. It's immoral. It's obscene. It has to end. Mr. Trump has played constantly with the Dreamers. The Dreamers, as you know, are children who came to the United States when they were children, when they were not, they didn't know where they were. They were just with their families, and so these children are grown up. They're working. They're leading productive lives. They're ambulance workers. They work in hospitals. They join the military. They're American citizens in everything except the citizenship document. And Mr. Trump has toyed with those people. So, oh, I'm gonna figure out this weekend, and we'll see what we do. He has no plan for giving them a passport citizenship. They deserve one because they pay their taxes. They're good people, and uprooting them from their communities and taking them back to a country that they have no knowledge of, that they've never been to. Is just inhuman. And the further point is that when a person steps into U.S. territory, they kind of come under the protection of the United States Constitution. Our Constitution has several amendments. Among them is the Fifth Amendment, which guarantees all persons the right to due process. All persons, that's an important point, not citizens, not landowners, but persons. And they cannot be deprived of that right without due process of law. All the people who have been put in detention centers, all the children that have been put in detention centers have been deprived of their rights. That is just unconscionable. That has been the plan. That has been the program orchestrated by Stephen Miller, and who's the person responsible for this program in the Trump administration. Starting with the new administration, Mr. Biden will enact a plan to give the Dreamers a path toward citizenship and help solve this problem. Thank you.
All right. Well, after talking about immigration, I think it's a good moment to talk about the Americans living abroad, about you guys, about the expatriates, because we are in this panel talking from Barcelona, from Paris. There are people also connecting from the American Club in Lisbon, the American Club in Rome, the American Club in Brussels, besides all the students from the university. And at this point, I wanted to introduce the question that Frances Aldrich recommended me to put here. How will the party who wins affect Americans living abroad? About these questions: taxes, social security benefits, stimulus packages, and vaccinations, and citizenships for siblings. Francis writes, my feeling is that as an American and paying taxes, the government should ensure that those living abroad have access to the vaccination process when the companies created and commercializing these are Americans. Do you have any answers to this question so important for you guys who are living outside the States?
Regarding the vaccinations, no. But I imagine that there'll be an issue, and it's very legitimate for expatriates, whether it be Democrats and Republicans, so it's a legitimate issue for all. Secondly, we've been working for tax-based residency, tax imposition for the last several years. That we even tried to pass a Fair Tax Act in 2018. Unfortunately, when we tried to present it into the House of Representatives, none of the Democrats want to sponsor it, so it went under because we want to do and simplify the rules regarding FACTA. Again, even the Democrats abroad, we see on their websites, complain about all the problems they're having with banks and issues here because of the FACTA passed by the Biden and the Obama administration at the time. We're suffering because of that. Our Republican Overseas has been involved in litigation against the IRS. We've had success. Even myself, I've acted with our other ROs across the country. We're fighting in court based on these restrictions, and we're getting results. So that's positive news. And I hope that we'll have also, we presented a letter for an executive order modification regarding the fact that they will be open up a commission after the elections regarding FACTA to see what consequences it has on Americans abroad and whether we can simplify things and try to revamp the system. Now, being Americans abroad, we should all benefit from similar things. And I think that's what we've been working toward. And that's why we need to deal with that. But at the same time, if we're going to ask for a tax residency-based tax system for Americans abroad, we need to be clear that if we get to that, then it's gonna be hard to claim the rights that we get. Now, for the vaccines, I agree with you. And I think it's a very interesting issue. I don't have an answer to it, but I think as Americans, tax-paying Americans, we should have access to it. And I hopefully will have the support when we get reelected to go forward on the FACTA to try to modify it, because Americans abroad are suffering because of it. It costs us a lot of money to file taxes, to understand, to run businesses. We have to file 2 tax forms. We have to file in our own country and in the United States. And it's very, very difficult, tiring, and
Hello?
Oh.
You got frozen on the screen?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead then with your vision of the expatriates.
Surprisingly, Randy touched on a point that I think we kind of agree on, is that residency-based taxation. The United States is one of the few countries, I think it's the only developed country in the world that still taxes its citizens based on citizenship rather than on the country in which they are living and earning their main income. Just to repeat for you, Randy, I saw you kind of had some tech problems. I just mentioned that you've touched on an issue that we kind of agree on a little bit, in that we need to move to, well, our wish is that we move to residency-based taxation, that the United States is one of the few, possibly the only developed country that taxes based on citizenship rather than where you earn.
Eritrea is the only other one.
Great. Good company. Good company. So, and I think that would go a long way into solving this FACTA issue. If you had a residency-based exemption, say you're earning a salary in the country and that's where your money is, then that should be exempt. No need for FACTA declaration, which, perhaps the Spanish audience to our chat might not be familiar with any of these terms, but basically we're required to do reporting on the money that we have in banks. As a matter of course, over a certain level, we have to do an additional declaration. As Randy mentioned, we are filing taxes both to the countries in which we live, and then in the United States, there are tax treaties which equalize that, but it's a lot of fun come tax time to do that sort of thing twice. You know how tough it is to do it once a year. Imagine doing 2 times a year. So
in 2 languages.
Yeah, sure. So, but in terms of vaccinations, that's really tough. Hopefully there'll eventually be a vaccination. At this point, I'm very pleased with the public health care that I receive and my family receives here in Spain. I think it's a system that's been a bit under strain, definitely under strain lately. But everyone I've ever had interaction with has been outstanding. It's a fantastic system. And the fact that there's a public option really shows that even private insurance, when you have the two systems, a public option and a private insurance, because everyone is in the public pool, the cost of insurance goes down. In the United States, we don't have that, and that's one thing that makes life in Europe quite enjoyable. Not to mention the culture, the people, the food. Thank you.
Well, we found a point of agreement here, no, on this question of taxes abroad, and makes me go to this question of one of the persons following the chat, Ivan Rebollo, who said, one question for both panelists is bipartisanship, something anyone on the generation will see ever again this situation? Is something desirable? Will any party, be willing to renounce its available power quota to reestablish it? For example, reinforcing majorities in key topics such as the Supreme Court nomination. Maybe this last Supreme Court move by President Trump is not really on the line of this thought, but are there still bipartisan issues really on the American politics, or there's no way to find them? What do you think?
There is. We always find a job. I think they end up working together, right, Steve? We can say that at one point or the other, negotiations between both parties, and they find a solution at the end of the day. It's been a little harder because it's been polarized this last 4 years, but generally it works that way. Each party makes concessions, and they find an agreement on key issues.
That's how it should work. Unfortunately, in my view, the Republican Party has kind of gone down a path that's starting with the denial of climate change that has led them to drink the Kool-Aid of the Trump administration. And I'm confident they're about to pay a huge price at the ballot box. You've seen Republicans deserting the party in droves. You have the Lincoln Project that is kind of the spokesperson for that. Former Republicans who are endorsing the Biden campaign, rejecting Trumpism. And so I think there's a reckoning to be that the Republican Party is facing. I don't know where conservatives are going to go. Are they going to side with this kind of Trump cult party that the Republican Party unfortunately has devolved into? I mean, both my grandfathers were proud Republicans. They would not recognize what this party has become. In touching on the Supreme Court, what Mitch McConnell has done over the last 6 years has been to manipulate the Supreme Court, to erode confidence in the ability to select judges. 4 years ago, he told, 5 years ago, he told President Obama he wasn't going to consider his nominee 8 months before the presidential election. Here, he sees the chance to get Trump's third Supreme Court justice on. He rushes it through in the midst of an election. It's just unconscionable. And prior to that, the Senate majority did not approve other nominees for lower courts, creating a huge vacuum, which as soon as the Trump administration came into power, he started filling up the courts with very young, very inexperienced judges who are definitely not qualified to have the position. And then this last justice, I mean, 4 years ago, she was a law professor. Of course, anyone could be nominated to become a judge. She wrote articles criticizing the Affordable Care Act. She became a circuit judge. And then 2 years later, she's now on the Supreme Court for life. It's a broken system. We have to do something to change it. I think once the Republican Party reforms, maybe there's a chance of that. Thank you.
Any more comments, Randy?
Yes, of course. Well, a broken system. It's only a broken system when they're not in power, unfortunately. I don't hear that the record player going on when it was Obama and Biden. They seem to be happy to deal with those issues when they were in power. They had the House, they had the Senate for 2 years, and they're crying about today that the system is not working. And it's because they just don't know how to deal with the situation where we have Mr. Trump is dealing with issues. He made a promise to the Americans to bring in conservative judges. Again, and bringing conservative judges has also been a promise that he's made to his Republican base. And when he tries to work with the Democrats, they're the ones, even before he got elected, that created the Russian hoax. And there's proof with the emails, the meetings that the FBI has on record, that they're the ones that tried to interfere with his taking power. And that started from 2016-17 with the impeachment hoax. Again, they're using the system, the Democrats, to try to interfere with him running the country. And this is how the Democrats do business today. Again, look how Mrs. Pelosi says, we need to wear a mask. But when she goes to her little hair parlor, she doesn't need a mask. She goes in and she does her little hair parlor. It's the same type of thing. They're hypocrites. The same thing with Mr. Biden. He is a hypocrite. His policies are hypocrisy. The same way he's run his influence peddling with his son. Again, there is no integrity on the Biden administration. Again, Biden has been, surrounded by these conflicts of interest since the beginning. He's been selling his influence via his son across the world, getting several millions of dollars. And that's where the issue is today, because no one's willing to criticize Biden, or the media is going to criticize Biden today. The funny thing is, there's a joke that someone was telling me the other day, and I think it was pretty funny. If someone saw Biden walking out of a bank with a big bag of money, you know what they would say? They wouldn't ask what was going on. They'd say, oh, well, he's making a charitable donation to an organization. No one would believe it. They don't care. The supporters of Biden would never question his integrity. You saw I just had a question earlier. I wrote it on the conversation. I was just curious. A very, very interesting conversation. One of the people that participated, why am I saying it, is to show you how the Democrats and supporters of Biden say, when they want to exchange with me, they give me a whole list of accusations regarding Trump. He's a liar, he's this, he's that. But I asked them, can you give me a similar list for Biden, and then we can discuss it? They never talk objectively about it. I could say that there are issues regarding Trump, and he provided the answers. You ask about the tax issues, he gave his reply, but not even addressing the issues. There's pure denial regarding the emails and the laptop. They said it's Russian interference. That's what the Democrats say. It's Russian. And the FBI and the National Security Director both denied it. There's no Russian interference. It's a hoax by the Democrats. And that's why the Business Associate came out and went on Fox TV to tell the truth about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. And Americans will see. That's the reality, and we'll get back to it. And I hope next week things will change again. And I'm sure Mr. Trump will be reelected. And when that happens, the Americans will wake up. If he does it with a crushing majority, I hope the Democrats will wake up and want to work with us in the House if they still have the majority, but they may lose that too. So all the best to the Democrats, and try to have a little more objectivity in your questions and your questioning of yourselves. Thank you.
Well, that was kind of a strong accusation.
No, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
I've been getting comments. I only get comments.
They were setting up a big investigation in the Wall Street Journal to go into that. They found nothing. The Wall Street Journal is owned by Rupert Murdoch. Do you think that organization, that outlet would have published something if there was something there? Of course they would have. The reporter for the New York Post who broke the story refused to sign the piece because it was so bogus. And of course, all this comes through that paragon of virtue, Rudy Giuliani. It's a mark of desperation of the Trump campaign that they're harping on this. It's not, it's totally unfounded. And if we want to turn it around, we can ask about the child of one of the candidates who is actually allegedly working for the government, who repeatedly violates the laws against campaigning from her position in the White House, who endorses products while she's working on the White House staff. But what does she produced? She's gotten what is it now? 28 patents from China, including one for voting machines. She's double dealing. She's working for herself. That really never gets discussed very much either, if we want to talk about things that don't get discussed. And then there's her husband, who had a boondoggle of a skyscraper in Manhattan, over $1 billion at 666 Fifth Avenue. Someone bought that. How did that happen? There's, you know, a lot of questions on that. So, but anyway, you know,
excuse me.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a lot of questions about that. So, but anyway, that's kind of off topic because what we want to do is, you know, get ready to turn the page, which is going to be happening on Tuesday.
All right.
You hope.
Tuesday, we are getting there. I think you both guys did a great job exposing your points of view to the public. I think a lot of people needed this last evaluation of the opinions of one party or the other to choose for Trump or for Biden. And we are in the last leg of the meeting. For me, it was great to be here in this debate. I hope the public got a great impression of the good deal of the American politics, of the democracy working, you know, with both sides presenting the arguments and getting ready for election day. I want to thank again to the American Club, to the CEU University for this opportunity for me to be moderating this panel, and hope that people really got more information. There were a lot of issues coming up, and I think you guys did, is my opinion, a great demonstration of your political capabilities. So thank you again for participating, for your opinions. And I'm going to give the word to Frances Aldrich to finish up this session with all of you. Frances?
Thank you.
Oh, well, I want to congratulate everybody. I think it's been a great debate. I think it's been equal, if we can say. You know, you were very generous to one another. It's nice to see a debate that everybody's calm and no personal attacks, you know, although nobody's the candidate here. But I'm going to give the last word to my president, Mike. I just want to thank you all very much, and it's been a treat. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us, madam.
Thank you, Francis. Yeah, well, on behalf of the University of CEU San Pablo and the American Club of Madrid, we want to say thank you to everyone who's participated tonight and has followed the entire debate. Thank you, Stephen, Randy, and Javier for the participation. I think you all did a real good job. And just a friendly reminder that tomorrow we'll have 2 tables set up with different conferences on different aspects regarding the U.S. elections. And that's it. Thank you very much to everyone, and have a good evening.
What time is it?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good evening for
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
Thanks.
Bye,
We'll see
Steve.
you tomorrow.
Thank you,
Bye.
Mr. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.